extracurriculars. It was in 1982 where President Reagan brought the first guest to one of these speeches, and that's become a custom. You had the Air Florida crash under the 14th Street Bridge, and there was a CBO employee by the name of Lenny Skutnik. And it was a freezing, ice-cold day in Washington, and he famously dove into the river and rescued one of the passengers. And it was President Reagan who, about 13, 14 days later, invited him and started this custom of always having people in the House chamber. There was a disruption. This was not a State of the Union address, but September of 2009, you had President Obama giving his Obamacare speech, and he was hectored by Joe Wilson, the Republican representative from South Carolina. Listen.
There are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This too is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Now, Nancy Pelosi in 2020, she made some headlines when she famously ripped up President Trump's speech. He was going to be acquitted the next day in his Senate trial, the first Senate trial. And last year, Steve McCooey, he was removed over an outburst that his son Kareem was killed in Afghanistan during the withdrawal from Abbey Gate there. He was pulled out by the Secret Service and also the Capitol Police. He was charged, but those charges were later dropped. So sometimes we remember the other things that go on during these State of the Union speeches and not so much the content from the dais.
What a great historical perspective. And I love the fact, Chad, that you brought up that guy who helped fish one person out of the Potomac during the Reagan years, Lenny Skutnik. And in fact, 4 years after that first appearance where he was a guest of Ronald Reagan, they referred to that person as, okay, who's our Skutnik this time?
That's right. And he didn't have a guest the next year, but then it's become a tradition where you have the president, the Speaker of the House. In fact, I just reached out to the Speaker's office to see who they were going to bring in to the speech tonight. And sometimes it's a little bit like a West Side Story. It's kind of like the Sharks and the Jets, and everybody brings the people who are on their side to make their showing. And the Democrats this year, we're told, are going to be bringing a lot of fired or furloughed federal workers to protest DOJ.
Right. It's becoming a little bit, Chad, like the British, where they just yell at their prime minister and he gets up and sits down. Remember Laken Riley? Remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene said, say her name? He said Laken Riley, and he said Lincoln Riley. But that was also the give and take. They kind of saved Joe Biden. He seemed to be tanking his speech, and that pepped him up again.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's the things that you can't predict about what's going to come out of a speech. You know, people remember they thought that President Biden last year, certainly after that point, it was a more energetic speech, especially if you contrast that with his debate performance in June, which pretty much tanked his presidential bid. But that's the importance of these speeches, because a lot of Americans don't tune in. They don't watch TV every day. They don't tune into the internet, but they watch this speech or they watch, clips that are played, and that's their dose of politics for the year.
All right, thank you so much, Chad. There's an article in Axios, and the headline says, some Dems plot to disrupt Trump's speech to Congress. If you read the article, it says that some might walk out, bring in props like noisemakers and hand clappers, red cards, pocket constitutions, empty egg containers, and signs with anti-Trump, anti-Doge messages, even though there was a closed-door meeting yesterday on the House floor and lawmakers were discouraged from using props.
Well, I just don't understand how we're supposed to take them seriously. This is not a sporting event, even though I understand.
New Year's Eve.
Right. It's like, what are you guys doing? And then to the egg point.
The reality is that we're starting to see a devolving of our civilness in Congress. And it's a lack of respect for the different institutions, the executive branch, the judicial branch, or even the legislative branch. And that is happening amongst the different branches. Inter-branch relations are breaking down, but also intra-branch relations, Democrats and Republicans within the House or the Senate. And then you have just overall government representatives not respecting the people, the will of the people, nor the will of the people respecting government. So we're seeing this lack of regard of civility. And it's dangerous. And it's, I think, a data point to suggest that we're moving towards a new type of revolution that may be more in line with the French Revolution than the American Revolution. Because the disparity between the haves and the have-nots has grown exponentially.
I mean, have you seen the chart from the Secretary of Agriculture? Eggs have been going up way before Donald Trump. He's only been in office less than 2 months. And now you want to you didn't talk about eggs the entire presidential race. You wanted to talk about the threats to democracy and all that. And by the way, the Constitution, I mean, you're real rich. You've been targeting your political opponents using the Department of Justice, and now you care about the Constitution.
Well, egg prices are high because of bird flu.
That's correct.
They leave that part out. But it sounds like, in addition to the kind of poo-pooing the prop idea, it sounds like, according to the same Axios article that Ainsley was referring to, it sounds like some Democrats may, when the president starts talking about a particular issue, may stand up and walk out. For instance, when he starts talking about trans people like trans men in women's sports and things like that, they're going to get up and they're going to move out. And don't forget, it was not that long ago when Rashida Tlaib held up during a joint session of Congress a sign when Bibi Netanyahu was talking that said war criminal. So look for a sign. And I would imagine it could be something related to Doge, Brian.
All righty. Let's go back to Bloomberg here.
There's like Walmart with a model of 30, and Walmart with a big pullback has got a PE. I got to get the symbol right, Jess. I knew it the Bloomberg.
Actually, its PE ratio is trading above.
So we're live streaming now on Rumble, YouTube, my website, and simulcasting on X Spaces.
Twice as well as the equal weight S&P. I think it's something like 56% versus 32% for 2 years. I think that is going to go the other way the next couple of years. I think we've already started to see it. So you got a lot of high quality companies that, number one, are cheaper statistically on a variety of fronts, not only on a forward PE basis, but on a variety of statistical analysis. They look pretty intriguing. So I would focus on that part of it more, from a valuation standpoint, the quality.
We're going to have to run here. I'm sorry, but I got the news to get to. The news flow. Can you come back again? Take the Sikorsky up from Florida.
Absolutely. And then when you come down, we're going to go to Burns.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wanted to do that.
You tell me where you sat at the bar.
Excuse me. I've sat many places. I've sat in the bar at Burns Steakhouse in Elkhorn. That was good. There's some New York Yankees there. I even spoke to them. And then you go upstairs to the dessert floor, where they have the phone by your desk.
Doesn't get any better than that.
And your kid calls and orders 3 desserts at $28 each. Good morning, Burns, Tampa. This one, Jay Bowen with us here with Bowen Haynes. A brilliant note. Look for that note from Bowen Haynes. Dow down 2,200 points from the peakedness of where we were.
Yeah, the S&P 500, 5.6% off of that all-time high.
Is that a correction? I say no.
No, that is not a correction. No,
to you or Brockton, it's like, oh, it's a correction.
No.
To me and Jay Bowen, it's like, no, it's not a correction.
I mean, even the NASDAQ 100 isn't over 10% off of that high yet. It's still a little bit over 8%.
We'll have to see. The Dow, negative 431. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Tom, Jess, Lisa, thank you very much. President Trump is pitching the theme of tonight's congressional speech as the renewal of the American dream. We asked Brown University political scientist Wendy Schiller what she'll be listening for.
I'm not planning to listen to anything in particular because I never know what Donald Trump's going to say. But this will be about, again, how he will negotiate deals that are in the better favor of the United States, how he's already doing what he promised to do. And that he's going to basically it's a campaign speech, and you're going to see a lot of Republican unity. This is what this is. This is a show, and this is also the president reminding the Republican Party that he won, that he brought them in, that they owe him and they should stick with him. And this is a public display for that reason, going into very difficult, I think, tax cut and, debt ceiling and budget negotiations in the next couple of weeks.
Wendy Schiller at Brown University. Our coverage of President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress begins tonight at 8 Wall Street time on a special edition of Bloomberg's Balance of Power. President Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on most Canadian and Mexican imports and raised the charge on China to 20%, affecting roughly $1.5 trillion in annual imports. President Trump has directed the U.S. to pause all military assistance to Ukraine as he seeks to pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky to engage in peace talks with Russia. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Jess, Lisa.
Michael Barr, have you ever been to Windsor Assembly? It's Stellantis Chrysler right now. You go across the bridge through the tunnel. You go back a little bit, and people don't understand. It's not just Red Rouge and Rouge and Rouge. There's like factories right across the board.
Oh yeah, I've had to cover stories over there. So yeah, I mean this is going to impact the auto industry, especially in Detroit, big time. These tariffs.
Did you drive a town and country station wagon?
No, but my mother and father did, the size of Arizona.
There we go. The auto business we know. From New York City, Bloomberg surveillance.
All right. So what I want to do is go to Mike Rowe. He talks about the disappearance of Americans' willingness to work.
To explain, Mike Rowe, Works Foundation CEO. Great to have you on the program, Mike. So what is the problem with the will? Where is the will to work here?
Look, the best answer to that question is a book I read years ago by an economist named Nick Eberstadt, who wrote Men Without Work. They republished it during the lockdowns because so much of what he prophesied came to pass. 6.8 million able-bodied men right now are not only not working, they're not looking for work. And Nick argues that that's never happened in peacetime before anyway. So the skills gap is real. The will gap is also real. And, we started at my foundation awarding work ethic scholarships precisely because in 2009, I'd written an open letter to President Obama at the time saying that, look, I'm rooting for you. These 3 million shovel-ready jobs sound great, but nobody's really talking about the country's relationship with the shovel and the conspicuous lack of enthusiasm surrounding the business of picking one up. So what emerged from that was a kind of PR campaign for good jobs that actually exist that people aren't excited about. What concerns me today, frankly, is that I'm literally on the BLS right now. There's 586,000 open positions in manufacturing, right? So I watched the last segment, and I'm rooting for this president, too. I want to see reshoring. I want to see U.S. manufacturing and reinvigorated, and I want to see more jobs created as a result. But if we can't fill the 586,000 we have right now, what are we going to do with the 1 or 2 million that get created? I don't have a snappy answer for you. I just know that part of the answer has to be making a more persuasive case for the jobs that currently exist. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We're doing what we can, but it's a problem with many solutions.
Well, Mike, it makes me wonder, are the government benefits for not working outweighing the will and the opportunity to work? But you have certainly been doing more than your fair share. I mean, your foundation giving away $2.5 million in trade school scholarships. I mean, you have put millions and millions of dollars out there to get these people trained and get their own jobs. And I wonder why are more people not taking advantage of this?
Because we might all be created equal, but we're not the same people. And we right now are the product of decades of cookie cutter advice that have impacted the way we think about education and the way that we also think about work. And that's a problem. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. And while it's true that we've
Breaking news, S&P 500 has wiped out all gains from the election rally that we've had, and I think it's over $3.4 trillion of market value.
awarded over 12 million in work ethic scholarships. My goal with MicroWorks is not to help the maximum number of people. It's to help a number of people who comport with our view of the world and are willing to go to where the work is and who are willing to demonstrate something that looks a lot like work ethic here in 2025. So we're picky, and I'm super stingy with the money that we give away. But over 16 years, we have seen the needle start to move. It just moves in fits and starts. And it's like turning a tanker around. You're right, Jason. Politically, this thing always devolves into a, what's wrong with these people? Are they lazy? Or are the employers just greedy and rapacious? But of course, the bigger question really is, why did we take shop class out of high school? And why haven't we stepped back in to show a whole generation of kids that, yeah, you can make six figures welding all day long? I have 2,200 examples of that.
Mike?
Plumbing, steam fitting, pipe fitting. AI is not going to take those jobs.
Yeah, I've got 30 seconds to give you to answer this question, but a lot of people will make the argument that jobs that American men don't want to do, that's why we need immigration in this country, for immigrants to do them. Legal immigration, by the way, because if you don't have papers, you can't necessarily work in manufacturing or whatever. Do you buy that argument?
I'm afraid that argument strikes me as adjacent to slavery, frankly. I don't think we can think about it that way. If it's legal, of course, then we're talking about American citizens competing on an equal playing field with regard to qualities like work ethic and personal responsibility and delayed gratification and all the stuff that we want to reward. But if we think about, oh, well, the only way we can have the lifestyle we want is to either import people illegally or pay them under the table, we've lost the fight.
Yeah, Mike, the jobs you're talking about, they are well paying. They're really good paying jobs. Micro, you're the best. Thanks for joining us. We gotta go though. All right, coming up,
guys. Thank you.
He's right. He's absolutely right. Manufacturing is very important for American society. And not only that, like I've said, if you manufacture, then you build innovation. Innovation comes from building stuff. Innovation is not just design. All right? So you need to build stuff, because then you start learning about processes and how to improve the process and, you know, quality and all of that. A lot goes into manufacturing. All right? A lot more than typing up a document, you know, in a lawyer's office. All right? So Mike's right. We need to bring, but the thing is that there's not a willingness to actually build up those skills. That's probably because of the educational system has been destroyed in this country, and that's why the Department of Education needs to be abolished. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula helps with getting you into 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. You need those cycles of sleep on a regular basis to be able to detoxify your body, to be well rested in the morning, and guess what? It'll help to consolidate memory. If you are sleep deprived chronically, you will lose your memory. You're going to be building up toxins in your central nervous system, and you're not going to be well rested. So you're going to have early onset of dementia, and your immune system will go down, because usually when you are up all night and you're not getting, you know, good sleep, your cortisol levels are more elevated. That means that's immunosuppressive. You don't want that. You want to age faster? I don't think so. Do you want to have a bad immune system? I don't think so. So guess what? Get the Goodnight Formula. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and also passion flower, and some other ingredients in here. Just take a look at the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is what you need to have the energy, to be well rested, and to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system and prevent early onset of dementia. Why? Why not get more sleep? All right. Now, too much sleep is bad, but there's an awful lot of people that are chronically sleep deprived. Get the Goodnight Formula and get the well restedness that you need. Another great product that's dual purpose is olive leaf extract. This will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How? Dr. Paul Cottrell, how does that work? Thank you for asking. Olive leaf extract will bring down inflammation. And when you bring down inflammation, your immune system improves. Also, when you bring down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing the chances of building up new plaque. Because one of the cascades, one of the processes in this whole plaque cascade is inflammation. When you reduce inflammation, you're reducing the chances of further plaque buildup. Take olive leaf extract every day. Also, olive leaf extract brings down LDL levels and helps to increase your HDL levels. What does that mean? It means that it's improving your total cholesterol, so you're not oxidizing LDL. So you're not having the inflammation to build up plaque, and you're lowering LDL levels so they don't get oxidized, so you don't build up more plaque. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is a simple solution to help to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular health. Take it every day. Don't be stupid. All right? Vitamin B complex, really important to take, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? The first 4 vitamins, B vitamins, will help with your mitochondrial health. It helps with the electron transport chain, so you build up ATP. That means you're going to have more energy. Now, with vitamin B complex, you're going to be improving your cellular metabolism, and that's really important to have good working tissues in your organ systems. And vitamin B complex will help to protect your neurons. Protecting your neurons is very important when you get older. You don't want gait issues. You don't want memory issues. So take vitamin B complex and follow this holistic approach, all right? And that holistic approach is proper diet, proper exercise. That means resistance training, cardio, stretching, and balancing. All 4 of those different types of exercises activates different parts of your nervous system. Learning new things will help improve your memory and your thinking and your positive neuroplasticity. Because you have neural connections that can build on each other. And the more neural connections you make, the faster you're going to be thinking, the better your memory. So it's a holistic approach. By proper diet, proper exercise, learning new things, meditation or spirituality that will calm your body down. And another really important thing is to learn new things. If you learn new things, then you're going to be activating those neurons, all right? And the B vitamins here are going to help to protect the myelin sheath of your neurons. So when you get into your geriatric years, you're going to be healthier. It's a holistic approach. And then, as I was saying before, good sleep is really important too. So if you apply this holistic approach, proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, learning new things, spirituality, some sort of calming meditation, right? When you do all these things and take the stacks that I'm telling you to take, you're improving your health and wellness and slowing down the aging process and improving your immune system. This process works, but you got to be diligent. And you got to be, you do it, Can't just sit there and go, well, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it a little bit. Maybe I'll take one thing. Maybe I'll just exercise. And if you're only doing yoga, you're not going to stay healthy. If you're only sitting and learning, in a chair, you're not going to be healthy. If you only meditate, you're not going to be healthy. There's lots of fat Buddhas. If you only just take supplementation, you're not going to be as healthy as you can be. If you're only going to have proper sleep, it's a holistic approach. If you listen to what I have to say and you stack the supplements the way I'm telling you to stack them, you're going to be targeting different organ systems and you're going to be improving your health. Now, it's up to you to listen, but what I have to say works. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera here. Egypt says it will present a comprehensive vision to rebuild Gaza.
Independent people made up of Palestinians that would be running the Gaza Strip potentially for 6 months in preparation for the return of the Palestinian Authority. Also, President al-Sisi said that there would be a reconstruction conference that would be happening in Cairo next month. And that's really important because up until now, we've wondered if this conference was going to focus more on reconstruction. Some of the reporting suggesting that there would be a proposal that reconstruction would take up to $53 billion. It would be happening in either 2 or 3 phases over the course of the next several months, potentially years, or if it would be focusing more on perhaps the political willpower of what to do in Gaza over the course of the coming years. It seems now we're going to be hearing that this plan is going to be comprising bits of both. Beyond that, we also heard from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and he said essentially that reconstruction requires governance and security. And he said that it has to be forging a political solution for Gaza in order for any of this to work going forward.
Okay, thanks very much, Mohammed Jamjoum there. Let's go back to the Arab Summit there. We're hearing from Jordan.
Khalifa, the monarch of Bahrain, Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, may God's peace and blessings be upon you all. I extend thanks to the League of Arab States and our brothers in Egypt and Bahrain for their concerted efforts for organizing this summit. My fellow leaders, today we are required to emphasize 4 key points. First, our total rejection of the forcible transfer of the Palestinians and reiteration of our support to a clear plan for the reconstruction of Gaza within a specific timetable which can be presented to the effective and active partners in order to bring it into action. Second, to support the efforts of the Palestinian Authority and their quest for reform to the best interest of our Palestinian brothers in a viable, workable manner for the administration of Gaza and bringing it into connection with West Bank and providing all the basic services and provide the required and necessary security. Third, the necessity to put an end to the grave escalation in the West Bank, namely in the holy month of Ramadan, to prevent the situation from being exacerbated or provide an opportunity for the radicals in the Israeli government to fuel the issue further. Fourth, to reiterate that the 2-state solution is the only means for achieving a just and lasting peace which guarantee the establishment of the independent sovereign Palestinian state on the Palestinian home soil with East Jerusalem as its capital, and provide a collective and comprehensive political horizon for stability in the region and to steer the peoples of the region away from further conflicts. And here I would like to reiterate that it is important to have the ceasefire in Gaza maintained and continued, and all the phases of the agreement be put into implementation. We also emphasize and reiterate our rejection of the Israeli decision to deny the delivery of the humanitarian relief aid into Gaza, which is in violation of the international law. Jordan will continue to exert all efforts possible in support of our Palestinian brothers and provide the relief aid into Gaza and oversee and safeguard the Muslim and Christian holy sites in Gaza, West Bank and Jerusalem, and also do all that's needed to preserve peace and stability in the region. Now I give the floor to His Excellency President Mahmoud Abbas, the President of the State of Palestine, to deliver his message. In the name of Allah, the Omnipotent, the Merciful, Your Royal Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, the President of the summit, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, ladies and gentlemen, may God's peace and blessings be with you. Today we are gathered in this extraordinary summit as we are faced with great challenges threatening the Palestinian cause, namely the calls for forcibly transferring our people from their homeland, which are totally and categorically rejected. And we thank all the Arab and European states who had taken the initiative and were quick to reject this irresponsible and inhumane call. We also reiterate our rejection of the Israeli practices to mandate a reality of occupation in West Bank and Jerusalem with the purpose of undermining the two-state solution and torpedoing the entire Palestinian cause. In this context, we commend the Arab-Egyptian plan for the reconstruction of Gaza in presence of the Palestinians on their homeland. And we call on President Trump to support the efforts of reconstruction on this basis rather than any other basis. And here we also thank President Trump in his efforts for achieving the ceasefire in Gaza and his endeavors.
What I want to do is I want to transition to Bloomberg here.
Secondaries and co-invest business. We're micro investors. So as micro investors looking to invest capital, whether it's in private equity or in direct lending, what we're looking for are opportunities to deploy capital at attractive risk return. So we don't, when we wake up in the morning, we don't seek to avoid risk. We seek to price it correctly. And so in an environment like this, for sure, if you're looking at a portfolio company opportunity, when you think of the value creation plan, you're factoring in now the uncertainty, which undoubtedly will impact the extent to which you're going to pay for that asset. And so, yes, in our existing companies, in our existing
we're going to
portfolio,
switch over to Sky News here.
And
here at this point. The difficulty here is I think everybody's trying to work out what Trump's strategy is. What the European leaders assumed it was, if we look at the spending, is that Trump wants Europe to be less reliant on military spending. And so on the graphic on the left there, that's how much the US contributes on expenditure, NATO countries, all of the rest of the NATO countries don't even get close. So by that graphic, America feels that a lot of the nations who aren't meeting their 2% obligation should be. If you look at though also how its contribution to Ukraine was a very different story. This is the NATO countries supporting Ukraine as a proportion of GDP. You'll see here the UK and the United States down at 0.5%. Look at all those countries to the left there, which are spending significantly more on Ukraine. And all of the events on Sunday, led by Keir Starmer, were trying to get European leaders to up their game, spend more. The trouble is, Trump's strategy seems to be entirely the opposite, that actually you don't want to give more aid to Ukraine. He sees if you extend the war, aid simply prolongs the war, therefore he's trying to cut it off. So that's why he's been criticising the Europeans for this initiative. And by stopping US aid, particularly in a heartbeat like that, it just can't be matched by Europe at all. So this feels like a bit of a punishment for Zelensky for not responding to his efforts to get a peaceful end to the war.
Interesting. So talk to us about some of the wider implications then of all of this, Sean.
Well, of course, President Putin will be watching his television as well. He'll be, and we've heard some of the responses from some of his acolytes. If US support diminishes, that puts Russia in a highly advantageous position on the battlefields. We know that Putin actually wanted to take the whole of Ukraine. He's had to settle for a smaller part. If he now ups the pressure and does a breakthrough because the Ukrainians don't have missiles, that could have catastrophic consequences. It's all very well Trump putting pressure on Zelensky to force him to negotiate, but those negotiations will only work if he also wants to negotiate. And from a warfighting perspective, you're only normally prepared to negotiate if you've got some sort of stalemate or one side's won and the other side's lost. Neither of those conditions are around today. So by punishing President Zelensky, by stopping the aid, if President Putin is not ready to negotiate, you hand him a golden ticket to actually keep pushing forward. And that could have catastrophic consequences for Ukraine as a whole.
Europe too. All right. Sean, thank you for that. Now, US tariffs have been imposed on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China, and they're going to come in from today. Chinese imports have been hit with an additional 10%, bringing the total to 20%, while Mexico and Canada will face 25% duties. But there are warnings that consumers will face price increases in the next couple of days, and just how much of this impact will be felt by households and businesses, our economics and data editor Ed Conway explains.
Why are tariffs such a big deal? Let me give you a sense of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow a component as it's manufactured. Actually, it's a component that goes into a car, but it's a component of a component because it's the piston that goes inside an engine in a car that's made in North America. And right now, here's the journey it takes. It starts off here in Michigan. So in Michigan is where the raw aluminium that's going to become part of that piston is then shipped across the border, that's key here, across the border into Ontario. So in Ontario, it's cast into a piston, and then it goes back to Michigan again, okay? And at that point, when it's in Michigan, it needs to go down to Mexico because it needs to be finished, and it's finished in a factory in Mexico. So it goes all the way down there, across the border.
And that's because back in the day, NAFTA. Because what the automotive OEMs were trying to do, that's like Ford, GM, Chrysler, back in the day when I was an automotive engineer, right? That was the way to increase the profitability of these vehicles and be less reliant on union labor. So there's two things that are happening here. The union was too strong that actually drove jobs out of the country. That's a fact. All right. The second thing is that Wall Street kept on pushing GM, Ford, and Chrysler to have more profitability. So these two pressure points on the OEM led to this problem. And why do they assume? Why do you assume that once you go global that you're not going to have problems with the supply chain, either because of a problem like what we had in 2020, or maybe there's a war, or guess what? Maybe there's a president that comes in and says enough of the bullshit of this unfair trade practice that's going on and the gaming of the system by Wall Street, that maybe we bring back these jobs. And then they have a hissy fit that you're unraveling this supply chain. Just like they're having a hissy fit when you try to unravel the cheap money that was printed by the Federal Reserve, and Wall Street has a hissy fit. It's the same issue. They want something, and then they assume that there's no risk down the road for reversal.
Into Mexico, but the journey's not over yet, because at that point it needs to go back across into Wisconsin and then Michigan, where it's assembled. It's assembled into an engine, and at that point, from Michigan, it goes again across the border into Ontario, and that is where it basically becomes part of a car. So it's assembled into the car, and the car at that point is basically a finished product, and that's shipped over to the US. It's one example. Deep breath here. But if you kind of totted this up, you might have come to the conclusion that, look, we're talking about 6 border crossings of that component. And right now, those border crossings in and out of the US are tariff-free, okay? And this is a free trade zone. If you're imposing tariffs on all of those border crossings, that will tot up. It will be a very big deal indeed, because it raises the cost. And that is a really big deal when it comes in particular to automotives. These bars are basically just showing you how much of each different category of import into the US is coming from Mexico, from Canada, from China, of course, which are the affected countries here. And with automotives, you're talking about over 50%. Over 50% of all the vehicle imports, but also the components as well, come from these places. A lot of it from Mexico. You see the green there. Look at energy. It was actually around 60% is from these areas. Imports, most of that from Canada. And overall, you're talking about 40% of all imports. So it's an enormous, enormous amount of imports. Imagine Brexit in the UK. So it's similar. You've got a free trade zone. We never actually impose tariffs. Tariffs here on any of these goods are going to push up prices. And of course, the extent to which they get pushed up depends on precisely how long these tariffs are in place for and how severe they are. This is showing you historically, so going back to the 1800s, just how high the average tariff rate was in the US. The famous example here, the 1930 Smoot-Hawley famous set of...
Let's think about this for a second. Who's going to lose more with higher tariffs? You think that the person buying the goods and services at the store, the middle person, the little one, or do you think corporate? Corporate is going to be worse off. One, less people will buy their goods, depending on the elasticity of the demand. But less people will buy their goods, and the stock market is going to hit them. And because the stock market is on a multiple, the shareholders and the company will be in a crisis. So actually having a tariff is a good thing to stress corporate to actually move manufacturing back to the United States. You have more to lose, right? The companies have more to lose in this whole tariff war issue than the average citizen. Now, here comes the problem. Because of the coupling between labor and capital, when the companies start to go down in their sales and their stock prices stressed, you'll have analysts pushing pressure on the companies to cut costs, and they'll lay people off. So the little person is going to get laid off and have higher goods. But stay the course, because what will happen is that there will be more money lost by the shareholders and these companies than the actual individual, because they're on such a multiple and they have so much money invested in that stock that as it plummets 15%, the average person that's buying their good that isn't a worker of that company, you can either shift to a different supplier or just don't use that product. There's lots of things that you buy and use that probably you don't really need. Do you really need, some of the extravagant things that people have in American life? Most likely not. But the problem here is that we've shipped away our manufacturing, and we need to go through the pain to get it back here, because we benefited from it short term for 30 years with cheap goods, importing cheap goods, but our manufacturing kept on going down and down and down and down, up to the point where no one really knows how to make anything. No. To put the pressure on the shareholders, put the pressure on the corporations. And what they're going to do is that these types of media outlets, they're going to say, oh, it's going to be hurting the consumer. The shareholder will lose more because their stocks are going to be plummeting. How is there a disparity between the middle class and the rich? It's because they're invested in something that has scale, that has a multiple. And when it drops, they lose more than you do. So let it drop and give the pain to these shareholders.
Some say they contributed to the Great Depression. That was really high. What we're talking about here, it's not quite as high as that, but certainly the highest since the 1940s. So really historic levels. And the upshot of all of that is, as well as it meaning higher inflation, because the cost of goods potentially go up, it means less activity. And this is a kind of measure of just how much activity there is in the economy in recent years. And the higher this line is, the more activity there is. Look at this. Just recently, in the last few days, the expectation is that the US economy is shrinking by 2.8% in the first quarter. A lot of people will look at that and say, listen, this is part of the implication of tariffs, but also broader concern about US economic policy.
Technical way reporting there now. In the past few minutes, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has been speaking at a manufacturing conference where she outlined plans to fire up the UK's defence industry. Let's bring in our business correspondent Paul Kelso for more on this. Paul, you were in the room and we heard a bit from Rachel Reeves in the last hour about some of her plans. It sounded like she was trying to reassure those businesses there that the government had a plan for this.
Yes, Rachel Reeves attending. This is the Make UK annual conference. Make is the representative body for the manufacturing industry in the UK. About 20,000 members, ranging from small and medium-sized enterprises up to the real big players. Many of them in defence industries, BAE Systems, and the like. Now, when this conference was planned and Ms. Reeves' speech was doubtless agreed, the theme here was going to be the wider industrial strategy the government has in mind and in aid her pursuit of growth. But defence is one strand of that industrial strategy, and of course defence has leapt to the top of the agenda after the diplomatic events of the last week, which means when Rachel Reeves arrived here to speak, her message in a fairly brief chat with the chief executive of the organisation was to the defence industries, those working out how the government could speed up procurement, something it's done as a result of the Ukraine war specifically, and how to adjust regulations so that extra money the government's committed, 2.5% of GDP by 2027, how that money can be spent most quickly and efficiently with value for money. But of course, this is in the context of questions about the US's commitment to Ukraine and European security in general. And of course, it begs a question about how this increase in defence spending, up to 3% by the end of the Parliament, Labour has promised, will be paid for. Points I was able to put to the Chancellor in a question we can hear now.
You've made a commitment to 2.5% of GDP spent on defence, rising to 3%. Are British taxpayers going to have to get used to the idea that Britain's defence and the support of Ukraine is going to mean more taxation? And could I ask, if you show that commitment in spending to the United States, British troops have already shown their commitment fighting and sometimes dying alongside American troops. Do you trust that the President and his Vice President will make good on their commitment to European and British security?
First of all, we set out the plan to get to 2.5% of GDP spent on defence in this Parliament. It's the biggest increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That is fully...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great deodorants that I have. It's a dual-purpose product for males and females. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. This will help to detoxify your body, but you use it also as a deodorant. Use it every day, and you get great benefits. Now, it is aluminum-free and baking soda-free. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high-quality ingredients. You're not going to be able to get a better bar than this, deodorant bar. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Discount 5, all caps, and then the number 5. Get the deodorants. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household. Help support my work and help support the work of Rainbow Herbals. Thank you for purchasing the ones that regularly purchase the bars. But for the ones that haven't tried it, get a couple bars for your household. You're going to like it. Taking a good probiotic is really important. I have a powdered version and I have a veggie cap version. I usually take the powdered version because I take a lot of different powders, you know, like lignans and collagen and the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley. So it's just easier for me to take. But I also have it in the veggie cap version. Take it every day. It's going to help with your digestion. It's going to help produce a good gut biome. You're going to reduce inflammation. Your immune system in your gut will improve. Your metabolism will improve. Your ability to absorb will improve. Your mood will improve. Your sleep will improve. And there's been research out there that suggests that better gut biome will help with preventing early onset of dementia or, you know, memory loss. So please take my advice, get a good probiotic. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get these probiotics. Take them every day as part of your stack. Good gut health is going to improve your skin, your hair, your nails. It's going to have a better communication with your gut and your brain, like I said. So you will see the benefits. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's go to Bloomberg here.
that will substantially increase our deficits. The projections are that independently of them, the deficit's going to continue to go up substantially, and with them, even more so. So I would say they're on a fiscally irresponsible and I think very dangerous path. Well, that's a continuation of conditions that have been. This has been making them worse.
So you mentioned the debt, annual deficits. I've been on Wall Street since 1986. That's been a story
This
since
is Rubin.
1986.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's Rubin. Rubin was tied into this whole beginnings of the destruction of the economy with Lehman. He set things in motion.
We're at historic highs in terms of the debt GDP ratio. The CBO projects that they're going to go from the current 100% to about 120% 10 years from now. But that independent analysts, by looking at increase or like the increase in defense and interest rates, interest costs, et cetera, think 130 to 135% is more likely. I think it is enormously dangerous, and the policies of this administration, at least as current,
Robert Rubin,
make that worse.
Robert
So how do
Rubin,
we fix it?
Robert Rubin and Larry Summers was the ones that orchestrated on reducing the regulation between banks, and the banks started to take huge risks in the real estate market, and voila, through financial engineering, they blew up the economy. It was Rubin and Larry Summers. That fucking asshole.
Public investment and national security, that will happen over time. The risk is that at some point it becomes what Ray just said, which is a fiscal crisis.
So isn't it rich? Isn't it rich for Rubin to be saying about the fiscal, potentially the fiscal risk of Trump's policies with tariffs? But he didn't pay attention to the actual risks of the economy when he was doing deregulation. And blew up the economy. Blew up the economy because of it. What right does he even have?
Is very small.
I mean, his record sucks about risk management.
And as I said a moment ago, it means a violation of that's what we're doing. Violation of treaty obligations, which then can affect our credibility around the world, which can affect us both politically and economically.
Another pillar of this administration is immigration, getting maybe a stronger handle on immigration, legal and illegal, maybe even deporting some workers back. A lot of economists will say that's not good for the economy either, because these folks are working, they're paying their Social Security taxes, they're doing jobs that Americans don't want to do. It's actually additive to the economy and keeping inflation down, wage inflation. How does that play into it?
You keep the wage down by bringing in the illegal. That's slave labor. That was what Mike Rowe was talking about.
On the legal immigration side, people of all skill levels, and a lot of very, very highly skilled people have come into particularly tech, but also across our economy. The illegal immigrants are a more complicated question, but I think what you need to do is you need to approach that not from an ideological perspective, which I think is what's happening, but rather from an economic perspective and decide what, from a cost-benefit perspective, is in our self-interest. And the answer to that is going to be, I think at least, a substantial increase may be the wrong word, but a robust policy with respect to legal immigration, and then an approach to those who are illegals who are here that is based on the economic effects of what we do.
I am judging myself for asking you this question, but I feel like I have to, because this is what people are actually talking about in terms of Trump policy, and that's the Mar-a-Lago Accord idea, that potentially you'll see, a big deal among major economies to address the exchange rate and trade imbalances. So you can have a trade war and not have a stronger dollar, etc. Is anything like that something that you were listening to talking about, like a Plaza Accord a la decades ago?
Well, Plaza Accord was a very different set of circumstances. I'm not sure what they're driving at, but whatever it is, I don't think they're going to get there this way. Aside from which, I think there's a lot of ideology about all of this. If you have trade deficits, and what's happening is you have an influx of capital, and then it goes into investment, that actually improves growth in the United States, and it's good for us. Mm-hmm. Now, if it goes into consumption, then eventually you build up, and if it goes into investment, then you have additional growth, and you can pay back the debt. If it goes into consumption, then you don't have the growth, and you don't be able to pay back, and over time, that creates a problem. But whatever you want to do, you do not want to approach it through tariffs, and you don't want to approach it through browbeating other countries or taking advantage of what is a strong position of our economy. What you want to do is want to increase productivity in this country and increase savings.
AI, you told us offline.
Totally disagree.
Totally
disagree. You got to bring back the manufacturing, and that's how you're going to increase the productivity. We have lost skills. We have to build up those skills to in higher paying jobs and have productivity through that. No.
With it.
He's just
And
a globalist.
I think it's going to change life as we know it, economically, geopolitically, and societally. And I think I don't think we're all ready for all the effects it can have.
What's an AI tutorial? Like what do you, is it some guy at your desk like going over something?
No, I'll tell you what it is. It's an extremely bright guy. We do it on Zoom. And he's taking me through the underpinnings. How does it work? And then what are the use cases? What effects does it have? And the more you get in, I would strongly recommend reading a book that's been recently published by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger. And what they do is they go through what AI what it is, but basically go through the ramifications, the potential effects of AI. It's really enormously worth reading. This is going to change, in my opinion at least, have profound effects on pretty much everything we do over time.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing from a lot of smart people as well. Robert Rubin, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, Robert.
And
Rubin,
I'm pretty sure the AI would have said during the Clinton administration not to deregulate the banks and have them do all these fancy financial engineering products to blow up the economy. Thank you, Rubin and Larry Summers. But Larry Summers and Rubin are the ones that are interviewed on Bloomberg, the ones that broke the economy.
Boy, I can get that at 4.13% here.
So that's the problem. These people don't push back because they're afraid they're not going to have guests on their show that happen to have big fancy titles and names. It's amazing. Rubin, the one they were talking to, he was in the room that set up in motion Lehman before Lehman happened. All right, by the deregulation. I believe he was the secretary. I think he was the Treasury Secretary during Clinton. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the lignans. Lignans brings down inflammation, helps with your immune system, helps to improve your endocrine system. It's for males and females. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, or smoothie. It's up to you. And it's also going to soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. You should take this every day to improve your immune system and your endocrine system. Turmeric brings down inflammation and is an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation and help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And ashwagandha is a great way to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. And by controlling them, you're going to be bringing down inflammation. Now, a great stack to bring down inflammation, help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system, so it's a dual purpose stack, is to take all these together. Take the lignans, take the turmeric, and take the ashwagandha. By taking these, you're helping with your immune system, and you're helping bring down that inflammation at the vascular level, so you're not building up new plaque. Really important. It's the third pillar of my core. What's the core? The core is a 4-pillar process. Max 35 or max 14 to help with your immune system. The second pillar is C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans to bring down inflammation and help with your immune system. And the fourth pillar is the boomer boost, and the boomer boost helps with boosting up your energy levels and your metabolism. That's the core. It's a it's a great way to get healthy. Now, you can take pieces of this and build up your own stack, but this is the core. You add stuff to it and you get huge benefits. It works. It's what I do. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the core. Get these products that I'm talking about. Help with your cardiovascular health, help with your immune system, and target all these different other systems. And you're going to slow down the aging process, and you're getting healthy. But it's not just supplementation. It's also proper diet, exercise. You have to detoxify your body. There's mindfulness. There's balancing exercises, cardiovascular exercises, resistance training, stretching exercises, learning new things, proper sleep, proper diet. All these things are very important. It's a holistic approach for you to slow down the aging process. If you're vigilant on doing this on a regular basis, you're actually going to get healthier. But it's up to you. If you don't want to listen, All right. But it's guaranteed that when you get into your geriatric years, you're going to have problems. But it's up to you. It's a free country.
U.S. President Donald Trump has often pointed to financial markets as a measure of how his presidency is going. After long-threatened tariffs went into effect, global markets saw volatile trading, indices showing sharp and widespread declines. And Canada, Mexico, and China reacted with retaliatory tariffs of their own. The first salvos in a trade war that is sending shockwaves through the global economy.
Let's be clear. If Trump is imposing tariffs, we're ready. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs, and we're ready with the first tranche of tariffs, which is $30 billion, which is already known.
History has shown that China and the United States benefit from cooperation, but suffer from confrontation. However, we will never accept pressure or threats and will firmly safeguard our national sovereignty, security, and development interests.
This will create hundreds of billions of Trump says this is about national security, immigrants and drugs coming in too easily across U.S. borders, and correcting trade imbalances with other countries. Critics say it is a shakedown and accuse the U.S. president of misusing emergency powers to please his political base. Analysts warn that retaliation will target that base.
They're going to look for the places that are the biggest pinch points for the president's party and as the Republican Party. And so they're looking at, actually how they can hit in states that are more Republican dominated. And that is, sadly, this is how trade wars work.
Trump returned to office demanding loyalty, seeking retribution, releasing jail supporters, and telling allies they have to pay up for U.S. protection. It is an approach that has left both friends and foes unsettled and wondering what comes next. Zain Basravi, Al Jazeera.
Well, Shihab Ratansi is in Canada's capital, Ottawa, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to speak at any moment now. Canada was quick to respond with its own tariffs. What's that likely to look like?
Well, they're taking a phased approach. So now we're in phase one, which is $20 billion US of tariffs on 1,256 goods, food and beverages, consumer goods, eggs, dairy, which are actually big issues in the US as far as inflation is concerned, and various industrial products. And then in 3 weeks' time, they say a further $86 billion of retaliatory tariffs will be imposed. We don't know what those will be levied against, but they're talking about passenger vehicles, electric vehicles, aerospace, aluminium and steel, big ticket items. But there's this fundamental contradiction here, because the government is clearly aware, though, that the impact of these tariffs is going to be felt by Canadians. It's going to raise inflation here just when there are the fears about factory closings, unemployment, recession.
See what I mean?
So it's actually going to make
they're always trying to scare the consumer, and they don't realize that it's the big corporations that focused on profitability and moving stuff out of your country to the point where it's detrimental to the well-being of our economy. And that if you try to pull it back, they have a hissy fit. Exactly the same problem with Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. They want Wall Street wants the Federal Reserve to continue to print cheap money. But that's inflationary. But they don't care, because they will make so much more money in the stock market because they've invested, and there's a multiple that they make. So you're going to hear in the news on how to try to scare the little person, to scare the middle class. You're going to lose your job. You're going to have everything's going to be more expensive for your goods and because of the tariffs. Well, stop buying certain things. There's a lot of things that people spend more money on stuff that hurts your body, than actually investing in their body and doing these holistic approaches. And then they whine that when they get older, that they have health problems. And then they have a high medical expenses because of the medication they're taking. And sometimes they need surgery or whatever. All right? They don't invest in their health. but they'll invest in a vacation that they really don't need. All right. They'll invest in frivolous spending, but they won't invest in their health. Do you really need a lot of the crap that they're saying that you are going to be paying higher amounts on? Most of it, no.
Of billions of dollars of money that was paid to U.S. farmers. They know that this is what's going to happen because China did this last time, and in 2018, 2019, the U.S. government had to spend about $28 billion bailing out the farmers. Now, Donald Trump doesn't seem to realize that. He has put out statements telling the farmers that they are going to really enjoy selling all of their products in the United States when the reciprocal tariffs take place in April, writing, "Have fun." That's not how this works. The U.S. farmers produce way more agriculture than this U.S. country, than the U.S. population can consume. They rely on exports. So the president also says that it's a myth that consumers pay for tariffs. He seems to, and he has consistently said that consumers don't pay for it. These countries pay for it, money into the U.S. Treasury. Again, not how this works. The tariff is given to
Ontario to issue 25% export tax on electricity to U.S. Why did we have our electrical grid tied to another country? That was really stupid, especially for national security. See the problem now?
75% of people said that inflation had had a moderate to severe impact on their daily lives. Inflation is still high, not as high as it was under Joe Biden. It was about 9% at its worst, but it's still at 3%, which is more than the Federal Reserve likes to see. And so when prices start to go up, and especially when the businesses in the red states are impacted, that's when you could see a backlash. Because again, unlike the 2016, Donald Trump is in the White House largely because he promised that the price of eggs are going to go down. Obviously, bird flu having a huge impact on it. But just in 1 year, to give you an example of how much this is impacting consumers, price of eggs have gone up 53% in this country. Again, bird flu a big reason for it, but if there are tariffs placed on eggs, that's just going to make it increase that much more. And that is what American consumers notice first. So perhaps not noticing it today, but it's not going to take very long until they do.
Until their homes feel that impact when it comes to their shopping list, as you said there. Thanks very much, Bessie Colhane, there with the latest. Well, Beijing has responded to the Trump administration's additional 10% tariffs on Chinese imports with its own countermeasures. They include an added 10 to 15% tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, and also adding American companies.
Now, if you look at this just from a transnational capitalist point of view, where you don't have an affinity to any country, all right, just a transnational capitalist point of view, globalization, you get it going and build routes where you have these supply chains and these low-cost centers, and developed nations are purchasing these cheaper goods, and these corporations are making lots of money, and makes you think that you're benefiting from it, but you're really just importing deflation while your government is issuing debt because your society sucks because it doesn't make anything. All right. So they pushed this policy going all the way back to the 1980s and 1970s, right? But a big push in the 1980s with called liberalization of markets through Thatcher and Reagan. All right. And these transnational capitalists now are pushing back because you have someone like Trump in the Oval Office saying, no, bring back the manufacturing. And they're having a hissy fit. They're having a little hissy fit, and they're going to scare people. Watch. Because who controls the media? The government and big money. All right. So who's going to lose the most in absolute dollars? Big money, not the average person. Now you're going to feel pain at your household, but the thing is, who's going to lose more money? It's these corporations that are benefiting from globalization. and they're scared. And so they're going to try, instead of unwinding their supply chains and moving it to the United States, they're going to try to demonize Trump and scare you to go against him. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Put maximum pain on these shareholders and these corporations. Maximum pain. You got to break the addiction.
Including those on agricultural
The thing
goods
is that you got to break this addiction to this globalization framework that we've been sold for the last, 40, 45 years.
Donald Trump, after the White House decided to suspend its military aid to Ukraine. The US is the biggest single donor to Ukraine's military effort, but Donald Trump paused support after a confrontational meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday. Trump also criticized him for suggesting that an end to the war is far away.
Of course, we count on US support because a significant amount of support, including intelligence,
I'm going to go back to
and the important element.
Ben Gray, President and COO of Blackstone. We will take all of that live from this Bloomberg Invest conference on a day where markets are really tumbling here. We are right around the lows of the session. You have the NASDAQ off by about 1.3%, the S&P off by 1.5%. This is Bloomberg. Happy Tuesday.
All right, so the S&P 500 is trading at 5,756. VIX is trading at 25.07, so it's elevated. The Euro USD is trading at 1.05. So the last few videos, the Euro is actually appreciated. The oil is trading at $67.37 a barrel. BITO ETF for Bitcoin long is 18.48. So there's definitely stress in the Bitcoin market. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 148.49, and that's stabilized. Now, my perspective with Bitcoin is that there's a high correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin. But there are multiple variables involved with certain types of assets, right? Now, in regards to Bitcoin, those variables are Federal Reserve policy, the strength or weakness of the American dollar, the direction of the stock market, regulatory risk factors, and kind of almost black swans like the hack. All right. Now the hack took place a couple weeks ago now. All right. So there's been a major sell-off, and lots of people are moving out of ETFs. There's an ETF flow out. So there's big institutional investors were putting money into the ETFs. Now, as the stock market is going down, because of this high correlation, so will Bitcoin. So I suspect that, remember those resistance points that I talked about earlier, 5,750 and 5,500. Those resistance levels for the S&P 500 might be hit, all right, during this up and down thing that's going on with tariffs. And Bitcoin will continue to have stress. But then in the news, there's going to be about regulatory framework being discussed in Congress. That variable would be positive for Bitcoin. If the Federal Reserve lowers rates, that would be positive for Bitcoin. But the chances are Federal Reserve will not lower rates. They most likely will raise rates if there's an inflationary spike because of the tariffs. So that would be Bitcoin negative. So it's important to take a look at these different variables. But a big variable is the correlation between Bitcoin and the actual stock market. So a lot of this stress may seem as though it is the hack from Lazara Group or whatever it was called in North Korea. of 1.4 billion. That's not the main driver. The main driver is actually the sell-off in the stock market. Okay. Let's go back to Al Jazeera here.
As they announce the sanctions, it takes a long time of haggling and deciding exactly on the details before they get unified action. And I think that is what is likely to happen here. And there's not complete unity among the European countries. And I think we're going to see that in a summit that's taking place in Brussels. There is a problem in that I don't think that they have the capability, the EU and the UK and Norway, which are the other two European allies that aren't members of the EU, to fill in all the gaps. The big ticket items like Patriot missile defense, like the ATACMS missiles, they don't have that. They don't have necessarily all the intelligence capabilities that the US has and provides to Ukraine. And of course, there's Starlink as well, which is a commercial thing. But it's run by Elon Musk, and Ukraine has built a formidable force of drones over the last 3 years. But without that Starlink internet capacity to control them, they'd be in real trouble. No suggestion that's going to be cut off right now, but of course we know how close Elon Musk is a key part of the decision-making now in the White House.
Children caught up in Sudan's conflict have been suffering sexual violence. That's according to the UN Children's Agency. It's recorded more than 200 cases since 2024 and says the total number is likely to be much higher. Now, the war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces is now nearing its third year. Evan Morgan has this report.
When fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces started in April 2023, millions were displaced from their homes in search of safety. Some left all their belongings behind. Others carried with them the horrors of the conflict and the mental and emotional scars. Aden and her daughter Malek fled the capital, but couldn't escape the memory of Malek's sexual assault.
My daughter Malek was sexually assaulted. The boy who did that is our neighbor. He took her to a farm in a remote area. He tried to rape her using a firearm, but someone passed by and saw what was happening. He intervened and beat the boy.
Malek is one of dozens of children who've been sexually assaulted since the conflict began, according to a new report by the UN's Children's Agency. UNICEF says that at least 221 cases have been reported, but that the real figure may be much higher. It also states that children as young as 1 have been subjected to sexual violence, and access to healthcare for those affected is hard. Hospitals have been destroyed, and medical supplies are lacking in conflict areas. Omnia had to flee the violence after her children were assaulted.
At night, someone would open the door carrying a whip. He'd select one of the girls and take her to another room. I could hear the little girl crying and screaming. They were raping her. Every time they raped her, this girl would come back covered in blood.
UNICEF says that a third of the 12 million displaced in Sudan's conflict are children, and that the violence increases their risk of being sexually abused by the warring factions, accused by rights groups of using sexual violence as a weapon of war. The agency has called for protection of children in areas of conflict and says if survivors are not given in...
All right, let's take a look at some other news that is popping up. All right, let's play Cash Jordan, because we need to know what's going on with ICE at Amazon.
Numbers, but there is broad reporting about migrants being swept up during recent immigration raids.
It is a scary proposition for tens of thousands of hard-working migrants, especially those.
So, as ICE agents flood New York City looking for dangerous individuals and gang members, they can wind up at pretty much any business. And while an alleged raid at one of Amazon's warehouses was probably shocking to everyone inside, immigrant advocates are outraged, saying workplace raids have nothing to do with deporting the high-level criminals ICE says they're after. Unless, of course, those criminals are doing whatever they can to hide in plain sight. Exclusive video of federal agents swarming into a Washington Heights building hours after a similar sting in the Bronx.
A couple dozen arrests made in the early morning hours across the city, and that number grew.
It's leading to fear in these communities. It's not only palpable, but it's starting to actually become more and more visible. There have been raids in nearby Newark, New Jersey at a wholesaler fish there. And then we saw most recently a raid at the Bronx Terminal Market. It's a well-known food market.
Antonio and
The problem is you got this lack of regard for law. Society's devolving. And it's not just the illegal aliens. You see this a lot in minority communities. All right, in the inner city, a lot of these minority communities, even if these minorities are American citizens, there is a huge problem with lawlessness. They have a lack of regard to just civil law. And it's amazing. There's a real lack of ethics in society now. Big problem in New York.
He owned 2 businesses and employed nearly 30 people, some of whom are also undocumented.
We're entrepreneurs. We're working hard. We don't have any criminal records. We're following the rules. We're making the community a better place, a safe place.
You're sweeping up a lot of them. All illegal entrants. Do you really believe they're the same?
No, absolutely not. And that's why we're prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats. And we have given ICE instructions. When you look for the bad guy and you find others with them, you go arrest them because they're in a country in violation of law.
So an alleged ICE raid took place at an Amazon warehouse with a manager at the facility warning it might not be the last. And even though the news outlet on this says they can't confirm all the details, what nobody in New York wants to admit is that if ICE does go and raid a warehouse and they take dangerous criminals and get them out of the country, they've done everyone in there a favor. Because according to the border czar, ICE doesn't just raid random...
Even though he released this video today, you can tell that he most likely recorded it yesterday because yesterday was cold in New York. There are wild swings going on with the temperature in New York this year. So, but because he's all bundled up, he most likely recorded it yesterday.
And if ICE gets a tip that a criminal is hiding at or being aided by a business, they may locate individuals in the company of that criminal who've got ties to them, are assisting them, and could also be dangerous. And the reason critics are so upset about this is there are over 400,000 people unlawfully living in New York City, many of whom have jobs that these businesses rely on, leading defenders of illegal immigration to claim ICE's enforcement actions could crash the local economy, as these immigrants are taking jobs Americans refuse to work at. An extreme statement for sure, as one has to wonder if it's possible 0 legal New York residents will work in air-conditioned convenience stores or allegedly at places like Amazon, especially when a 2022 study revealed 17% of workers under the age of 24 want jobs but can't find them. And that brings us to the real reason why workplace raids are an important part of keeping the country both safe and prosperous, allowing a massive number of people to illegally live in your city and get jobs there just empowers the criminals who connect them with these jobs in the first place. We're talking gang members and the businesses that prey upon these folks, who even though they claim they're making the world a better place, are doing no such thing when they underpay and exploit their workers. Now, of course, it's very hard to blame individual workers for taking jobs that are offered to them if they're here and need to feed themselves. But the businesses hiring these people instead of Americans are preying on their desperate situation, taking advantage of people who have 0 workplace protections, like guaranteed minimum wage and labor safety laws. Plus, as you're about to see, when someone gets an illegal job at a legitimate-looking business, they're often only able to do it with the help of criminals who've embedded themselves in sanctuary cities. So here we've got a whole bunch bunch of local businesses. Some are part of a larger corporate entity. Others are small, independent shops. They might only have 1 or 2 locations. And according to the news, some of these independent places have admitted to hiring people who are unlawfully in the country. And some of these individuals have figured out how to get jobs at larger corporate chains that might have a more thorough employment vetting process. And now workers at pretty much every business are on edge, thinking that at any moment ICE agents could walk in the door looking for somebody who's dangerous.
Antonio and Sarahi own their family home, 2 businesses, this restaurant and the deli at the corner, and employ nearly 30 people, some of whom are also undocumented.
We're entrepreneurs. We're working hard. We don't have any criminal records. We're following the rules. We're making the community a...
So this woman and her husband, they seem like nice, hardworking people, but they're wrong. They're not playing by the rules because it's illegal to hire people off the books. That's a crime, and legitimate businesses don't do that. And not only does hiring people off the books empower criminals, they're not making their community better, because anyone illegally working at their air-conditioned restaurant or convenience store has a job that a law-abiding resident of that community can't have. But before we get into how people might be able to illegally get jobs at a place like Amazon or Target, it's important to understand how any business illegally employing people hurts their community in ways many people don't even realize. Because companies who do this, they don't just take away legitimate jobs from legitimate legal residents of their community, they also deprive legitimate business owners of the opportunity to compete in a fair marketplace. Think about that. How do you open a legitimate restaurant or cafe next to one that's not playing by the rules and has lower labor costs than you do? Your prices are automatically going to be higher than theirs because you pay more for labor than they do. And in a tough economy, whoever's got the lowest prices, they're the ones who are going to win and everybody else is going to lose. And if people are working at a place in an off-the-books manner, they're not benefiting either. Sure, they might have a job, but it exists in the shadows, and these people don't benefit from any of the worker protections which exist to stop predatory businesses from harming their workers in the first place. And living in a country where the laws that protect others don't apply to you is not the American dream. Instead, it just means that you're being taken advantage of.
Worksite enforcement is coming back. No one hires an illegal alien out of goodness or hard. They're hard because they work from hard and pay less than other competition as U.S. citizen employees. But most importantly, where do we find most victims of trafficking? Worksites. They have to pay the cartels off. They force them in labor situations, overwork them, abuse them.
You know, this is something that many people have never considered. The fact that when ICE reads a business, they find trafficking victims, that totally goes against the narrative that ICE is going into these places and pulling out people who wish they were there and are the happiest they've ever been. Especially when they're only going to businesses based on tips about ongoing criminal activity and the presence of dangerous individuals. They're not going to places where the only thing possibly going wrong are that otherwise law-abiding people are working illegally. And in New York especially, the signs of trafficking are everywhere. Literally, if you go to the bus terminal, a location where many asylum seekers and recent immigrants first arrive, you'll see signs warning people about this, which wouldn't be there if it wasn't a problem. And according to the Border Czar, when businesses do their hiring, they could be bringing people into their company who are trafficking victims, and they might not even know it. Yet that person's entire paycheck ends up getting turned over to the criminals who forced them to take that job in the first place. And where might these criminals find their victims? Well, this report says they're being located in the very shelters that New York City opens to keep people safe. Shelters which are infested with gang members because as a sanctuary city, we don't do background checks, and police are banned from patrolling these places, which just allows the criminals who are smuggling weapons inside to become the de facto law and order standard, doing whatever they want to whoever they want, and nobody can stop them. However, these gangs, they're not just getting people jobs at little mom and pop restaurants or convenience stores, they're also helping people get jobs at corporate entities that may have no idea they've just hired somebody illegally.
Migrants being arrested repeatedly on the Mad Mile for retail theft. And once they were interviewed, they explained why.
They were then being able to either buy or trade for Social Security numbers, cards, or American Permanent Residency cards. And this story we were getting over and over again.
This is what the migrants were bartering for, fake ID.
So this story is from a Fox affiliate in Chicago, but this same thing is taking place right here in New York. and fake IDs are being sold openly on our streets by gang members, which should be expected in a place that allows massive numbers of people in the country unlawfully to stay here. They're gonna need a way to provide for themselves, and that creates a marketplace for false identification. And where are people getting the money to buy their fake IDs? Well, according to this news report, they shoplift and steal and commit crime, which is such a problem in New York that our state is home to a $4.4 billion shoplifting economy. And when you walk through a store in the city, you'll see most products behind plexiglass. And although this is the obvious result of decriminalizing thefts that are non-violent and under $1,000 in value, this type of arrangement allows low-level petty thieves to do this as a full-time job, which is why you have so many open-air theft markets throughout the city where people are just reselling stolen goods on a sidewalk somewhere. But even if a person steals just long enough to get a fake ID so they can work at Amazon or Uber or Target or any business that actually checks, they're going to need a real ID and a valid social security number. And the way these criminal gangs help people get an ID like that threatens every single person in our entire country. All right. It's one thing for a person who's in the country illegally to get a job.
I'm gonna shift over to. I'm shifting over to Al Jazeera. Trudeau's speaking live.
$125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Encore aujourd'hui, on se voit forcé d'imposer des droits de douane de 25% sur 155 milliards de dollars américains de marchandises. 30 milliards de marchandises américaines. 30 milliards de dollars de façon.
Never mind. Forget it. I'm going back to Cash Jordan.
The world a favor. But it's quite another for that person to get a job at a legitimate looking place like this Subway where they check. But in a city with over 400,000 people who aren't supposed to be here needing employment, that's gonna have to happen if everybody wants to work. And because of that, you have a new victim entering the equation when it comes to unlawful employment. And that victim is anyone who has legal work authorization in this country.
This is what the migrants were bartering for, fake IDs, in order to secure employment.
And then the vast majority of them are released.
Nearly 500 fake IDs were uncovered, social security cards, driver's licenses, and American permanent.
So you gotta wonder, where does a gang like this get hundreds of fake IDs? They've got stacks of them and they're all for sale. Now, of course, the IDs could all be bogus, but it's not gonna be good for business if word gets around that they don't help people get jobs. Which means if somebody puts the information on that ID through some sort of database that checks to see if people can actually get jobs, there can't be any errors, which means some of the IDs floating around out there got into the hands of criminals in an illegitimate manner. Now, the way for criminals to get their first few IDs that they sell are to have themselves, friends, or family members recreate a legitimate ID and then sell those IDs to people who kind of look like whoever's on the picture. But that's not going to work forever. And the fact that there's demand for these things should terrify everyone who's ever been involved in some sort of data breach. If your identity or personal documents have ever leaked, a more sophisticated criminal could use that information to recreate your ID with someone else's picture on it, and then they could sell it an unlimited number of times to an unlimited number of people. This article says a legit driver's license will go for $500. The New York Post found gang members in Queens selling IDs from $80 to $250, some of which were obviously bogus. But what this reveals is that even somebody who is well-meaning for the most part has to subject themselves to the criminal underworld if they want to get a legitimate-looking job in this city, or in any city in America for that matter. Even so, there are people out there defending illegal labor practices as being good for the entire country.
Even my dry cleaner, I went the other day, and there was nobody there. And she said, well, I let my employees go down to the protest in Newark. She said, and then she asked me, do you think this is good for the small business community? And I went, well, look at your shop. This is one day. What happens when your employees just don't come in peace?
So here's what's going to happen. That business, they're going to be forced to hire legally, and they're going to be forced to play by the rules. When businesses and everybody plays by the rules, the country is better off. The country is not better off if businesses break the law to get a leg up on their competitors while acting like they are engaging in some noble pursuit that's not at all related to money, especially when giving those jobs just leads to numbers like this, where 17% of people aged 16 to 24 can't get jobs in New York City. And these are people who would be willing to work in an air-conditioned business where they can bring their smartphone like a grocery store or a bodega. These are not people who won't work because they refuse to do the jobs that exist. And here's the thing. These businesses like this dry cleaners mentioned by that news anchor, of course they're not hiring people who they think are victims of trafficking. And they might think they're playing by the rules because so many businesses here don't. And the most maddening thing about all of this is, yes, New York is a sanctuary city, but it's also very progressive. And who do progressives say they're sticking up for? The little guy. They're out there on one hand advocating for the little guy to get higher wages and more protections, but at the same time, they're totally okay with businesses who don't do any of that in the name of open borders. Minimum wage in New York is $16.50 an hour, and ask any progressive, they'll tell you that's too low, and they'll tell you that greedy businesses should be paying more because workers are the most valuable input in any economy. Unless, of course, those workers are in the country illegally. If that's the case, there is nobody advocating for them to get higher wages or more protections. There's just anger at the fact that ICE is here and might arrest somebody who's a criminal. And this puts progressives in sanctuary cities in a catch-22. Here they are advocating for policies that disenfranchise workers who they say are already disenfranchised by virtue of their immigration status. And these unlawful workers, they don't have the one thing legitimate workers have, which protects them. And that is the power to walk away from any business they feel isn't treating them fairly and work somewhere else. That's not possible if the only job you can get is because the people working there are willing to break the law. And this brings up a big question. Are the businesses who are hiring people illegally doing something good? Or are they just doing something that's good for their bottom line at the expense of the rest of society? And does that empower the very criminals and gang members ICE may have to raid a business to find in the first place? Let me know what you think about that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
You know, the reality is that this porous border caused a lot of problems. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. The drops are smaller than the lozenges, and you can get more drops in each bag. You get 100 drops in a bag. For the lozenges, you get 21, actually. I have it in 3 different flavors for the drops: blueberry, honey and lemon, and also in cherry. Very tasty. The flavors are great. The packaging is awesome. And the product is very, very high quality. It's made from structural nanosilver. And once you have that irritation during the allergy season or during the cold season, take it right away and mitigate the problem. You want to mitigate the problem right away, because if you let it fester, you got more issues that you got to contend with. So you can also get it in the lozenges size, in a 21 count, either in Manuka honey or in elderberry zinc. So please go to my store, get a few bags for your household. Have some at work, have some at home. Right when you have that irritation, that irritant, take it right away and mitigate the problem. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and you get $5 off. These are very high quality lozenges and drops. So please go to my store, help support my work, and help support your health and wellness. All right, let's go to Trudeau. Hopefully he's not talking French.
With the Wall Street Journal. But Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see. And now, to my fellow Canadians, I won't sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough, even though we're all going to pull together, because that's what we do. We will use every tool at our disposal so Canadian workers and businesses can weather this storm. From expanding EI benefits and making them more flexible to providing direct supports to businesses, we will be there as needed to help. But Canada, make no mistake, no matter how long this lasts, no matter what the cost, the federal government and other orders of government will be there for you. We will defend Canadian jobs. We will take measures to prevent predatory behavior that threatens Canadian companies because of the impacts of this trade war, leaving them open to takeovers. We will relentlessly fight to protect our economy. We will stand up for Canadians every single second of every single day because this country is worth fighting for. Les derniers mois ont été stressants.
That was the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking about some of the their willingness to work together with the U.S., but concerned obviously about the implementation of those tariffs, and we're seeing some retaliatory tariffs coming fast and furious from Canada.
Yep, Justin Trudeau saying that Donald Trump is a smart guy, but this is a dumb thing to do. So distinguishing that.
No, it's
saying
not.
President
No,
Trump-
it's not. It's how you do negotiations. Trump is a genius at this. Guess what? Canada has got a lot more to lose than the United States. Will there be stress in the United States? Absolutely. But guess what? In the end, the American worker and the American economy will be better off. And the Canadian country will be much, much worse off. Why do you think that? Why is the Canadian economy and country where it's at right now? Because of the trade that has been going on for the last 35 years with NAFTA and its reincarnation with the renegotiation that took place, whatever they call it, MCAA, whatever. But Americans in the long run are going to benefit. But you're going to hear in the news and you're going to see it, at the grocery store. Prices are going to go up. But you know what? Most Americans are overweight. It's time to lose some poundage. Most Americans, guess what? They're too worried about their vacation and they need to be a little bit more stoic. It's time. It's time. 35 years of pretending that our economy was really robust. But what was really happening is the middle class was being eroded. Hell with this is the way it's going to need to happen.
To be practically speaking, his team, his Commerce Secretary, and his trade representative hadn't really been confirmed until recently. But nonetheless, we've traveled a lot of ground in these 6 weeks. And I think the question a lot of the columns were asking this morning when I was going through the reaction is, near term, these tariffs are clearly a negative for growth. They will drive up prices and they will cause disruption to business. But the question is, how long will they stay on? Is it some kind of a negotiating stroke leverage tool? To your point about this is grand strategy, people around the president are steering him on this, or are these tariffs going to stay in place long term? And if so, the longer they stay on, the bigger the impact will be to growth. So I think that's one of the key talking points coming out this morning. There is quite a lot of shock among economists. It's happened so quickly, but still question marks over how long are these tariffs going to stay in place.
But then there's the context too. In particular, the headline earlier from the Journal that Ontario is now going to be taxing electricity to the U.S. I was talking to Rob Barnett of Bloomberg Intelligence, and he said that in 2024, the U.S. imported about 27 terawatt hours of power from Canada. That's less than 1% of U.S. power needs, right? So some of the headlines and the numbers look really big, but then when you look at the specifics, it may not be that much of a change. And how do you filter through that?
That's right. So when we're talking about pain, most economic pain will be felt by Mexico and Canada if they're expected to even fall into recession. And obviously, there will be considerable pressure on China's exporters too, giving a total of 20% tariffs now. So the US is shielded to that extent. Nonetheless, though, there is a feeling that, and again, it goes back to the duration point, the longer these tariffs stay in place, then the more price pressures there will be in companies, the more pressure there will be to pass on those costs to consumers, from household goods right up to the industrial components. So there is an inflation component part of this. And then the second round effect will be, well, if that's the case, how are people going to respond in terms of buying goods? How will consumption patterns adjust and change? Will people buy less? Will there be less investment by companies? And then you get into the growth round. So, to your point, there is context to all of this. President Trump says it will drive investment, but there's also a case that economists are making that there will be near-term economic pain too.
All right, and thank you so much. We appreciate that. Ender Curran, economics reporter for Bloomberg News. He's based in Washington, D.C., giving us some color on these tariffs. Again, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau making some comments there about the trade situation. Right now, let's go down and check with Charlie Pellegrini, Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, thank you very much, Paul Sweeney. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining by 1.5% or more. Right now, we have got the S&P down 102. That is a drop of 1.6%. The Dow is down 1.7%. Dow Industrial is down another 744 points, while NASDAQ is lower by 285 on the NASDAQ Composite Index, a loss right now of 1.6%. The 10-year 4.13%, the 2-year 3.88%. We do have spot gold trading higher, up by $16 the ounce, $29.09, up by about 0.6%. And West Texas Intermediate crude, $67.50 a barrel. WTI down 1.3%. Brent right around 70.41 right now on Brent crude, down 1.6%. Cannot ignore the move in Bitcoin, dropping now by another 3%. Bitcoin at 82,757. So again, recapping, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ in the red, with the S&P down by 100 points. Tariff Tuesday, a drop right now of 1.7%. Back we go to the Bloomberg Invest Conference. Once again, your hosts, Paul Sweeney and Alex Steele.
All right, thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. We appreciate that. Paul Sweeney, Alex Steele here. Happy Tuesday. Tough tape if you're looking at the equity market. We are live from the Bloomberg Invest Conference 2025. We have all the top minds in finance talking about the pressing issues, not only how to invest money, but the future of some of the significant things and the transition that we're going through, like, for example, AI. And here joining us on set is Ben Wren. He's founder and CEO of SigTech. Now, SigTech is a London-based fintech company spun out of Brevan Howard in 2019, and it basically tries to help quants and users manage the capital markets. I'm not really sure I know what that means, so luckily Ben is here for us. All right, so give us the quick pitch on what your company actually does.
SigTech, we build specialist AI agents these days to help people make better decisions in capital markets, but also to automate a lot of the very high-value intellectual but not very creative workflows. We can reduce a lot of the things people do today, which are a bit boring, done from many hours to 30 seconds. I think that makes a big difference in terms of productivity.
All right, here's an example that I can think of, Mike.
Okay, tell me.
Being at the printer, not far from here, a couple blocks from here, down the at the 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, going over a bond prospectus. That's probably something that AI can help with. So, how much are asset managers, generally speaking, how much are they using technology today? How computerized is it? How quantitative is it?
I think in the last 15 years, there's a big trend in asset management to adopt more and more technology. And we can see this shift in terms of people using more data-driven investment processes, and people hire data analysts. And but Gen AI in the last few years is a big step change. I would say it's an unprecedented change in this trend. Just in terms of it's no longer incremental. There's a before and after. And when we think about previous technologies, we mainly focus on what we call explicit knowledge that we can codify, describe, and therefore use programming language to automate. But only until now, we're able to distill and automate so-called tacit knowledge, the knowledge that resides in our head, but we can't really so easily write it down and describe and codify. But now we can actually automate those, and there are plenty of those workflows and processes, especially in financial services.
So, how would you help like a regular quant manager? Like, I go to you and I'm like, hey, I need your product to help me get better, faster, or find better trends in the market.
Yeah, for quants, I think quants started with more number-driven. Trend following is if you do it like in a very simple way, it's entirely number-driven. But these days, we are moving to a world where we have to deal with numbers and text as two modalities at the same time. It's no longer just about technical analysis, but it's also about absorbing new information and turn non-numerical information into numerical information. And that's something that Gen AI does really well. Because fundamentally, if you think about how it's trained, it has been trained on trillions of tokens of textual data. And a lot of things we used to do either bespoke or proprietary fashion, these days we get out of box, such as sentiment analysis or extracting relevant information from very long pieces of text. These sort of things actually change how quants approach their daily jobs.
Are the big Wall Street firms making these investments, or is it more the hedge fund community that is more receptive? Who are your customers typically?
So these days, we mainly focus on buy side.
Okay.
But we also have very big clients in terms of like commercial banks, using our technology to completely change how they underwrite commercial loans. I think so. I wouldn't say it's a sell side or buy side or big firm or small firm. I don't think that's the main reason in terms of adoption. I would say the main reason is the leadership. When you approach something so unprecedented, it takes some time to build a consensus inside your organization about what's the strategy, what we do. But that may take 2 months, 3 months, and given how fast things change, after 3 months it's a different world.
Yeah.
Right. So it really takes some kind of conviction from a visionary leadership team to adopt this technology very confidently.
Yeah, after 24 hours, it can be a different investing landscape. So what's the best partnership between AI and humans? 50-50? Is it AI 75% of the decision-making process, 25% for human? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if I think about the knowledge work we do every day, I would describe them as most of them maybe not creative, but intellectual, right? Analyze a lot of documents, picking out the right information. It's intellectual, but it's not creative. So in the future, humans should devote almost all the time to creative stuff, what makes us different. Whereas the boring intellectual stuff can be automated by AI agents. On the other hand, we are certainly seeing a big change in the user experience, the user interface, because up until this point, people approach Gen AI mainly through a chatbot. There's a chat box, you type into it, you get some response. It's very nice, and it's really started the era. But going forward, we are looking at a user interface that allow humans to essentially collaborate with a large number of AI agents who specialize in different things. So how does that user interface look like? And how does that AI-human fusion intelligence look like? It's a very active field of research, trial and errors.
So this sounds like, from what I understand of AI, a lot of computing power requirements. Talk about the investments that you think these financial firms need to make, are making, or maybe need to step up.
Yeah, in terms of intelligence, the way I think about it is it's very similar to electricity.
Okay.
So we are currently in the first stage of investing in the infrastructure, right? And if you're going back in history, in the last 200 years, and the way we started building electricity grid, there's one magical number, which is 1%. The countries throughout the history spend about 1% of nominal GDP on building power grid, from 200 years ago in Britain all the way to today. So the big tech this year announced $300 billion in investment into Gemini data centers. That's almost exactly 1% of the US GDP today. So it's about 30 trillion. So in terms of infrastructure investment, we are there. And we are building incredibly big mega AI clusters across the country. Now, but we are shifting toward the application layer, right? Because once you have electricity, it's not about the electricity per se, it's about what kind of appliances you can build powered by electricity. So we are moving into that stage too, where there are a lot of investment, both in terms of talent and capital, into building the right applications that can actually make a big difference to the knowledge workers in terms of productivity. So we are starting that phase.
Last question here for us. I asked this of Mark Mahaney too. Is what's the biggest misconception?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc to boost up your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a double dose. Take one in the morning. Take the other dose in the evening. Drink it with filtered water because it's water soluble. Take vitamin C and magnesium to boost up your immune system and to improve your skin. Vitamin C should be taken every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose, drink it with filtered water. It'll boost up your immune system. This is a great stack. So take this every day and supercharge your immune system. And especially if you're not feeling well. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's a great stack. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All right, I want to go to Bondi here, talking about the DOJ.
All right, this weekend, the Boston mayor epitomized exactly what is wrong with the woke left when it comes to crime. Now, on Saturday night, a man with a knife chased 2 individuals in a crowded Chick-fil-A in Boston and was fatally shot by an off-duty police officer who was witnessing the incident. According to the police commissioner, the officer identified himself, told the suspect to drop the weapon. When the suspect did not comply, the officer discharged that weapon to stop the threat. But when it was time for the Boston mayor, Michelle Wu, to speak, she expressed sympathy for the knife-wielding suspect, but not the 2 individuals who were nearly stabbed. Take a look.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost. And I'm also thinking of all the people who were impacted here today in one of the busier parts of the city with this tragedy.
Then when asked about the backlash following her statement, Mayor Wu actually doubled down on stupid. Take a look.
You know, it's unfortunate to politicize being at the scene of a tragic incident. Our officers are in extremely difficult and dangerous situations every single day, keeping our residents safe. And I express condolences along with our police commissioner and district attorney, because every loss of life is a horrible tragedy.
Now, despite this incident, President Trump is making major headway on crime all across the country. According to a report from the New York Times, Trump's tariff threats on Mexico is now forcing the Mexican government to crack down on organized crime, forcing cartels to shut down fentanyl production, and they are going into hiding. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi continues investigating the Epstein files and attempting to get a hold of the files that were never handed over from the FBI Bureau in New York. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, joins us now live on site. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Are you drowning yet? How many weeks in?
Just a few.
Just a few. Let me start with the Epstein case, because there was an expectation that this was going to be bigger. You had the same expectation.
We all did. And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, you know, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m. Thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them. And Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course. And Cash is going to, Director Patel is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay, I want to be clear, because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York.
Yep.
So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself really a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, you know, we're going to go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein, because there are a lot of victims.
Well, you had identified in phase 1 over 254.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, is that the only thing that would be redacted? will everything else be made public that you get in your possession?
Yeah, the FBI hasn't had, obviously, they haven't looked at the thousands of pages of documents that they just received Friday.
Yeah.
But Cash has a team going through them, and it's always about protecting the victim. But you know what? We believe in transparency, and America has the right to know. The Biden administration sat on these documents. No one did anything with them. And why were they sitting in the Southern District of New York? I want a full report on that. Sadly, these people don't believe in transparency, but I think more, unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't believe in honesty. And it's a new day. It's a new administration. And everything's going to come out to the public. The public has a right to know. Americans have a right to know.
And that goes the same with the JFK files.
JFK,
files,
Martin Luther
MLK.
King. Yeah, absolutely.
What are the things that, and maybe some people don't understand the need to redact. In the case of a victim, that should be pretty obvious to people. What are the other things that maybe you'd have to redact?
Well,
National security?
no, of course, national security, some grand jury information, which is always going to be confidential, but we'll see. Let's look through them as fast as we can, get it out to the American people, because the American people have a right to know, not only on that, but on Kennedy, on Martin Luther King, on all of these cases that the Biden administration has just sat on for all these years. So yeah, it's really, it's not sad, it's infuriating that these people thought that they could sit on this information, but they can't. It's a new day, and we believe in transparency, and it's going to come out. And when we redact things, Sean, what we're going to do is not just pull pages out like they used to do. If something's redacted, you will know the line, and you will know why it's redacted. The victim's name, identifying information of a victim.
Let's talk a little bit about the DOJ prior to your arrival. I believe it was weaponized. How do we prevent that from ever happening again? I believe that once the FBI was the world's premier law enforcement agency, and that was weaponized and politicized. I believe the same with our intel community. How do we restore these institutions to their former greatness?
Well, first and foremost, we got rid of the Jack Smith team. Gone. Those people are gone. We're still trying to find out. There are a lot of people in the FBI and also in the Department of Justice who despise Donald Trump, despise us, don't want to be there. We will find them because you have to believe in transparency. You have to believe in honesty. You have to do the right thing. And right now we're going to root them out. We will find them, and they will no longer be employed. But again, we're starting at every level of the Justice Department, Sean, and getting rid of the worst of the worst. But there are a lot more people that shouldn't be there, but there are a lot of good people who are out there now risking their lives every day making these cases. Today we made a huge case involving a Guatemalan, an illegal from Guatemala, one of the largest human trafficking rings in the country, 20,000 people being smuggled into this country from Guatemala. That arrest was made in California. Last week, an illegal was arrested in New York for ISIS, funding ISIS. It's constant. We are going to get out there. We're going to arrest the bad people, take them off the streets, and restore the Justice Department to what it was made to do, fight violent crime.
Were you, or are you up to this point, I know it's very early in your tenure,
few weeks.
Are you at all shocked at how things were running before you got there?
Shocked. Shocked. Never thought, Cash and I, Patel, talk about this all the time. We knew it was bad. We never knew how bad. And especially we're on the criminal side and on the people who are in there. Well, you've heard the story, of course. I went up, I was visiting the floors. I walk up to the 7th floor of the national security, and I couldn't get in there because it's a skiff. Well, that's how it was secure.
Yeah.
But my detail managed to get me in there. They still had a picture of Joe Biden on the wall and Kamala Harris. That's how bad it was. So I personally took those off the wall. But that's the tip of the iceberg.
What about when you talk about people in the DOJ that have an awful lot of power, and maybe what they did to Donald Trump is unprecedented. Evaluation of Mar-a-Lago, the double standard with the raid of Mar-a-Lago, the FISA abuse, Russia lie, a dirty misinformation dossier signed 3 times by a former FBI head, in that case, James Comey. Are these all on the table to get to the bottom of over time?
Everything's on the table, Sean. We're going to look at everything. And as I said, the Jack Smith team, gone. That was low-hanging fruit, really. Get rid of them. Get rid of the people that raided the president's home.
We look into what they did.
Everything's being looked into. Everything. And right now, we are hiring great lawyers, great people around us who we can trust. Right now, the numbers are very small. But now that we have cash in, it's made it a lot easier at the FBI. But he's dealing with what we're dealing with. You know, the great men and women of DEA, ATF, the U.S. Marshals, we're all working together to fight violent crime. And it's a shame that a few people have given them such a bad name, as well as the Department of Justice.
It sounds daunting. It sounds like a massive list. It doesn't sound like you're going to be sleeping a lot in the next 4 years.
None of us will, but it's worth it. It's worth it to fight for the American people and to keep America safe.
Amen. Pam, thank you for coming in. Good to see you. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, lots going on, that's for sure. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Hopefully we'll be able to see some France 24 here, depending on what they're going to be playing. But as we're waiting, get the vitamin D3. This helps to absorb calcium, and it is a gene expression cofactor. So it's going to help with your cells expressing certain genes. It also helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 is something that you should be taking every day. But not just that, stack it with K2. That will help with the calcium absorption. But not just that, it's going to help when you do resistance training to build more density in your bone. Very powerful stack to do that. And by taking D3 and K2, you can also help with your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the vitamin D3 and the K2 together. This is a very powerful stack, dual purpose, help with your bones and help with your cardiovascular system. All right, let's listen to what France 24 has to say.
The UK government has also slashed foreign aid as they seek to increase defence spending. They are not alone, with European governments also cutting back aid, including France, which has reduced its budget by some 37%. But aid groups warn it will be women and girls who will bear the brunt, as Jennifer Ben Brahim explains.
A new era of global insecurity and cutbacks. The UK is joining other countries around the world in slashing international aid funding, a decision Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he did not take lightly.
Well, there is no driver of migration and poverty like conflict. And that is why ensuring that by taking strong action now to deter tyrants like Putin, we have to take decisions we've made today.
£6 billion of savings to be poured into the defence budget, a choice that many charities believe will have a devastating impact on marginalised groups such as women.
We are very concerned and we know what these cuts mean. We've seen them before. These cuts are going to take away support from women and girls who are hardest hit by conflicts. And that in turn is going to increase inequalities, which further increases global insecurity.
Keir Starmer's announcement comes as the Trump administration is set to freeze 90% of US aid contracts. The UK and the US are the top donors when it comes to funding for sexual and reproductive health rights.
I heard reports from our teams in Uganda who were saying that in one region of Uganda, a local anti-choice NGO has really piggybacked the stop work order from the US government to say that this actually means that contraception is illegal. Women are flocking to clinics to have their implants removed because they're scared. They think that they're breaking the law. And, you know, that's just a really clear example of how these political gestures really fuel misinformation and then have real world impacts on the lives of individual women.
Women around the world are already feeling the effects of these policy decisions, like in Kisumu, Kenya, where around 11% of the population is HIV positive.
I didn't take this announcement well because I've seen in the past that those who had the HIV virus and didn't stick to or missed their medications died and left their families. So I picture myself already dead and leaving my children to suffer.
European countries like France and Belgium are also cutting back. The Netherlands, one of the biggest funders of family planning aid, is slashing its budget by 30%, redirecting funds to projects at home.
Now, when you think of a psychopath, what images immediately come to mind? Most likely they would be that of a man, be it Adolf Hitler, Jack the Ripper, Charles Manson, or Joseph Stalin.
All right, let's just go back to Bloomberg here.
There's always going to be a negotiation, but the response that we have seen from Ottawa and Mexico City today suggests that those negotiations aren't going to be taking place right away. This is going to need some time to cook. So I think what you're going to see tonight in this joint address to Congress is you're going to see President Trump double down on this idea of tariffs, an idea of bringing back manufacturing jobs to the United States. His True Social posts about farmers growing stuff in the United States to sell in the United States. That's the message that you're going to hear tonight. Wall Street probably isn't going to like that, but I don't think you're going to see any reaction from the White House in terms of Wall Street for a couple of weeks at the earliest.
So Nathan, what is the feeling in DC amongst Congress, just the system, the bureaucracy about where this is all going here?
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of unease, especially amongst the Republicans in terms of these tariffs. Senator Rand Paul even just tweeted 2 hours ago that, look, tariffs are going to increase prices, and he cited automobiles. That auto prices are going to go up as a result of these tariffs. Senator Grassley from Iowa, he's going to have a problem this tonight as well, because as President Trump says in the speech, look what I did in terms of the tariffs. Well, China put retaliatory tariffs on soybeans. There's a lot of soybeans that go to China from the United States. So I think what's going to happen is over the next few days, in terms of this Republican response, is they're going to wait to see what happens. Now, Target and Best Buy have already said that price increases are probably going to be coming in the next few days. Is this enough to get President Trump to change his mind? Probably not. But as these farmers talk to folks like Senator Grassley, they're going to be saying, look, soybeans are down. We don't have a place to sell. So if you're not going to give us tariff relief, then you have to give us subsidies via a farm bill package. So there's a lot of unease negotiations here to be taking place between Congress and the White House over this tariff policy.
Which is what we heard from Justin Trudeau of Canada saying we're going to support businesses that are going to be hit by these tariffs when he was speaking earlier today. So this all comes ahead of the State of the Union. Nathan, what's going to be, say, the top 1 or 2 things that you need to hear to help, make a policy decision, have conviction on where we're headed?
Yeah, so when it comes to tariffs in particular, I'm not exactly sure what look, we're going to be seeing if there's any nuggets that President Trump says in this speech that Canada and Mexico can come back with. Now, President Trump has always said this is about fentanyl. I'm not exactly sure if I believe that. The reason being is that, the Canada-Mexico agreement from 1 month ago, 10,000 troops on the border and so forth, Prime Minister Trudeau even just said this morning that, they've done that. What I need to see from President Trump is this idea of, is there any way we could scale down the Canada and Mexico tariffs? Because if you remember over the weekend, Howard Lutnick was saying that potentially there's some flexibility here. And so I'm looking to see if there's any additional statements that he says that Mexico and Canada can do. But I also remind folks that on April 2nd, we have reciprocal tariffs. So if President Trump double downs and says, look, reciprocal tariffs are coming, I don't think you're going to see much of the way of this trade war ending anytime soon. The other thing that I think investors should pay attention to tonight is this tax reform debate. Because President Trump has said certain things like, look, I want to make these $4.5 trillion in tax cuts permanent, but at the same time, I don't want to touch Medicaid spending. So I want to see direction from President Trump towards Congress, and specifically those House Republicans, to see if he's going to put any leverage on them to support his goals there.
So what is the status of the tax package and the various economic packages? Because a lot of folks, Nathan, are telling me this is when the rubber's going to hit the road in terms of Democratic responses.
Yeah, so, in terms of this tax package, where we are is the House passed their budget resolution last week. Now, this wasn't a bill, this wasn't legislation, this was essentially a blueprint. And so what they said is, here, go forth, and this gave instructions to 8 House committees to go forth and look for $2 trillion worth of $2 trillion worth of deficit reductions to offset the $4.5 trillion in the tax cuts are going to cost. Now, there's economic growth, there's tariff money, and all of it should come approximately close. The challenge is that even though The House says that they want to get something done in April, if not May. The challenge is, how are you going to pay for this, and how are you going to get the entire caucus on Crete? Because if you cut Medicaid, you've already lost several constituencies. If you increase the deficit, you lost others. So, Speaker Johnson has this really tricky situation of trying to get everybody on the same page. What we're telling our clients is, look, there's no deadline here that's going to force the House Republicans to come up with a solution until the end of the year. So they have all this year to figure it out. So we don't think this is going to happen until the fourth quarter. We do think a package will eventually come together. We do think we'll, extend these Trump-era tax cuts, but we don't think it's going to change the Inflation Reduction Act all that much. We probably don't think it's going to change Medicaid all that much. But again, it's hard to come up with specifics because they have the rest of the year to figure it out. It's just not going to happen in the time frame that they're currently saying it's going to.
Right, and that therein lies the issue for the market. So the stuff that's negatively impacting the markets, like tariffs, Trump can do on his own and have an immediate effect. But the stuff you're talking about, like tax cuts that can have a stimulative effect on the markets, can't be just done by President Trump. Has to be done by Congress. So the longer that gap is, you have to wonder if it's going to be harder for the markets to digest.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about 2025 and think about catalysts, key things that are happening, right now we're going through the trade war. The trade war is probably the most important thing that's to the markets at this point, because look, we're seeing it in real time. We're seeing companies saying prices are going to go up. We are seeing the peso and the Canadian dollar go down. But then if you get longer term, we have government shutdown coming up March 14th. Very little impact on markets. In fact, every single time this happens, we put out notes essentially saying there's no market impact from the government shutdown. Next after that, you have the debt ceiling. This is probably June, July. Obviously, if you're on the fixed income side, you care very much about the debt ceiling. We think there's an 80% chance the debt ceiling is resolved with. So we, again, don't think a lot of headline risk. We don't think there's really all that much to be concerned about. But then the next one is this tax reform debate. That takes place towards the end of this year. So this tariff argument in terms of market angst, this is going to continue throughout the year because ultimately it's President Trump's decision on when and if this trade war ends. And so there's a lot of uncertainties that are coming out from Washington right now.
All right, Nathan Dean, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Nathan Dean, a Bloomberg
I don't
Intelligence.
think Trump's going to back down until there's reciprocal trade. I don't think he's going to back down at all. He's got nothing to lose. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the multivitamin. This is a very easy to digest multivitamin. And by taking a multivitamin, the minerals and the vitamins in here will act as cofactors for enzymatic activity. Your enzymes need cofactors, certain minerals, certain vitamins to perform their function better. All right? So by taking a multivitamin every day as part of your stack is really important for overall health. So please go to my store, take this multivitamin as a baseline. Also couple it with the probiotic that I have, either the powdered version or the VeggieCap version. But that's a great stack for you to start on this journey of getting healthy. But if you've been listening to what I've been saying over and over again through this transmission and in other videos, it's about stacking and targeting certain systems to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system. And by doing that, you're going to have longevity and vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the multivitamin. Another great product that I have is NAC. NAC is a supplement that I added to my stack to boost up my glutathione levels. That will help soak up free radicals. NAC also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney, especially if you take acetaminophen. And NAC helps with calming your nervous system. It reduces anxiety. And by doing that, you're going more into a parasympathetic zone, which is important for your overall health. And NAC helps with lung health, to improve your lung health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get NAC and help with your glutathione levels, detoxify your liver and kidney, help with the health of your lungs, and to reduce anxiety. Now, let's go back to Bloomberg here.
Hey, Mike, when do you expect to see some of this, either inflation pressures or slowdown in the economy? When do you expect that to kind of be seen in the numbers?
We're seeing some of it already, Paul, because of course there was a big surge in imports of material goods for factories in January as people tried to get ahead of the tariffs, and that should show up in inventories as well. But I don't think we're going to see, say, impacts from the tariffs for another couple of months, because it takes a while for all of that to get into the price chain. And then the question for the Fed, the important question is, are there second round effects? Do employees start to ask for more money? Do companies start to raise prices because they're paying more? So it's going to take a while for that. What we might see sooner, and this is not going to happen on Friday with this jobs report, but we might see sooner job layoffs from DOJ that then extend beyond federal employees, because there's less money being spent because there are no federal employees to spend it.
Mike, before we let you go, you deep teased John Williams' interview later on today at Bloomberg Invest. What's going to be your follow-up to the tariff Fed cutting question? Because you got to have one. You got to have 3 follow-ups.
I got to have 3 I got to have more than that. I mean, obviously, we ask his reaction, but then what is his view of the 2018 Fed strategy? Because the idea that you look through the tariffs and cut rates if you need to is based on the idea that this is a one-time increase in the price level, but not ongoing inflation. Well, that was true in 2018, but would it be true this year? Because Trump is talking about more tariffs next week and more tariffs at the beginning of April. And so you could see this rolling impact on inflation that the Fed would have to respond to. So we'll ask him about that. And he knows, I'm sure, everything we're going to ask him about the tariff.
Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then to that point, Harvey Schwartz of Carlyle was saying something similar, that if it's just a tariff, it's a one-off, it's trade wars, that's when we get into a higher inflationary environment. Mike McKee, thank you very much. Looking forward to that panel later on today. Bloomberg International Economic and Policy Correspondent Michael McKee. Quite a day here. For our listeners in the U.S., here's a reminder for you. It's an important one. You can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM channel 121 is presented by Oracle. Stay tuned for the latest market news and industry research. Balance of Power is next after this global news update. And I should point out here, we are off the lows of the session around 11:30. It looked like markets kind of bottomed out and are now trying to grind their way a little bit higher. We're now down only 1.3%. But considering that we were starting to get a little nervous there with the S&P and its 200-day moving average, that nonetheless is significant, but it's still a tough tape out there. So good luck trading, everyone. This is Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have Clarity Factor now in stock. It was out of stock since December. So get a couple bottles of Clarity Factor. This helps for you to focus at work or at school or just overall health. Most people would take just 1 dose a day. Some people that do a lot of cognitive function should take it about twice a day. Take 1 in the morning and maybe 1 in mid-afternoon is probably the best way to do it. But this will help you to focus. This will also help you to just get those neurons firing. And by getting those neurons firing and you're focused, then you're going to help to consolidate. You're going to help with your memory and support your memory, right? So this is a great supplement to allow you to focus while you're working and, if you're in school or whatever, all right, and to help support your memory. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is a great product. It unfortunately was out of stock for quite a while, but it's in stock now. And this Clarity Factor is way better than anything that Alex Jones is selling. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Clarity Factor. Take it every day. Be focused at work or in school or just your overall mental acuity and support your memory. please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, we haven't done a video off of TV7 Israeli news in a while, so let's play that.
Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments, particularly vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip, Syria, Lebanon, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and more, it's always important to remember that 515 days ago, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip committed the atrocities of October 7th that initially sparked the war, and 515 days later, we're still at the height of tensions, sporadic escalations in different sectors, and we are also on the verge of potentially an explosion, so to speak, vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip. On that and more, let's now turn to northern Israel, where we're joined by Colonel in Reserve Dr. Anan Wehebe. Anan is a senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University, as well as a lecturer at Haifa University. It's good to see you, Colonel. I'd like to immediately ask you to give us some insight with regard to the Gaza Strip. Defense Minister Israel Katz highlighted that unless hostages are released, the gates of Gaza will shut, as he put it, and the gates of hell will open. Very strong words coming in the direction of the Gaza Strip.
Yes, it seems like Hamas do understand that the new stage here with the new president of the new administration and Witkoff that is coming here to the Middle East is here. Something is changing. The voices from Israel, the voices from inside Gaza Strip are different. Hamas knows that he cannot just conduct the same strategy that he had started before. Here, the new Israeli conditions are held very well in the Palestinian Authority, as well in the Hamas warriors on the ground. They knew that explosion might come again and Israel might resume the war if the negotiation will fall. And here is the last card maybe that Hamas is trying to handle right now to continue to the second stage. They still have the hostage that they do have alive and dead, and there's lack of trust, total lack of trust with the Israeli side at the moment. And Hamas are trying to go back to the Arab states, to Cairo, and maybe there will be some backing of somehow handling the situation. And the fear of Hamas is what will happen after the deal. Not the deal itself, but after the deal, immediately after the voices from the Israeli government is that we will continue to implement that we have declared first. Hamas will not dominate the Gaza Strip, and we will disarm totally Hamas. So they are afraid from the day after much more than the next stage of the negotiation.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the Knesset plenum yesterday, Knesset Hebrew for Parliament, during the course of which he did highlight that the gap, as he put it, is too wide to breach right now. That was the conclusion of U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who therefore provided a new outline. This new outline is quite significant, but while Israel accepted the outline, Hamas continues to reject it. For that, I'd like to turn now to Central Israel, where we're joined by Ambassador Danya Yalon, formerly Israel's ambassador to the United States. a chief foreign policy advisor at the Prime Minister's office and deputy foreign minister, among a long list of different positions, and of course also the host of TV7's Middle East Review. It's great to see you, Ambassador. I'd like to gain somewhat of insight from you. What is the calculus right now between Washington and Jerusalem when we're talking about the Gaza Strip?
Well, Jonathan, it seems like the policy on the aim, the objectives of Washington and Jerusalem are very well aligned, probably more aligned than ever before. I do not recall such a coordination where there is simply no daylight. And we see actually that the statements that come from Washington and from Jerusalem are very much similar, I would say almost identical. And here it is quite clear from both Israel and the United States, and I believe also for most of the Arab countries, the elimination of Hamas as a fighting force, as a government, ruling force, and even more than that, is quite obvious. Now, the question is, how do you do it? And this is why I believe we go back to a maximum pressure. This is what is very well known in Washington, a strategy of Trump, who likes to, I would say, apply maximum pressure on opponents, whether it's the Ukraine or whether it was Iran, and now it is Hamas. And this is why we see now Witkoff, the presidential envoy, actually delay his arrival here because he wants Hamas to agree to the extension of phase A of the deal. And there is also a good, I would say, reason here until the end of the Ramadan, the end of Passover. And during this time, he would like to see more hostages freed and giving a chance for the Arab countries. And today we know that they were all summoned, the Arab League leaders in Cairo, to come up with a plan for the day after Hamas in Gaza.
Yeah, with that being said, just an observation, it seems like Steve Witkoff and President Trump both have some sort of good cop, bad cop approach right now, where Steve Witkoff, the presidential envoy, is seeking to negotiate and trying to establish all kind of goodwill gestures and highlighting the necessities and the goodwill and so on and so forth. While President Trump says, if they don't comply, destroy them. Israel has a green light. This has now shifted somewhat, where we see the envoy coming out and saying, if Israel decides or observes that there is no reason to continue to negotiate, since Hamas has already violated the deal on multiple occasions, and there are guarantees by the Americans after 42 days that the resumption of fighting may occur at any time in accordance with Jerusalem's considerations, this may erupt altogether, of course, and bring about a new paradigm shift. But with that being said, and for that I'd like to turn to elsewhere in central Israel, where we're joined by Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, who is the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Missile Defense. It's great to see you, General, as usual. I'd like to immediately ask you, the Houthis are coming out and saying, we will start firing into Israel again. We're starting to prepare for new surprises, as they put it. We hear additional terror proxies affiliated with the Islamic Republic of Iran, that is, also highlighting their steadfast support for the Islamist Hamas in Gaza. But there is some shiver in their words, so it seems. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Jonathan, allow me just to add a word to the discussion that was held before with regards to the Gaza Strip. I think that what is really changed in the way that the US new government is looking at things, and it is that their state of mind is that when you deal with the enemy like the Hamas, you have to come to agreement after they are being defeated. And this is something which is completely different from what we've seen before, and I think this is also something that drives a lot of the decisions that will be made with regard to the Gaza Strip. Going back to your question and the Houthis situation, from the Israeli point of view, and I think also from the US and probably also from the international point of view, this is still an open case, the Houthis and the situation with them. We have to remember that they are still interfering to the neighborhoods, they are still influencing the economy, for sure, of Egypt and others, and of course also the European community. And when it comes to their military capability, of course that Israel is being prepared to it. We've seen them trying to shoot toward Israel missiles, ballistic missiles, UAVs. The vast majorities of them, of course, were intercepted by Israel and also by the coalition led by the United States. And this is something that everyone is prepared. I think that here too the difference is not, it's looking at the overall strategy, and I think if in the past, the overall strategy, if the overall strategy was mainly defending together, although there were some strikes that were done in Yemen against those Houthis, I think that this strategy would be changed this time. And this is something that, of course, they will tell, and this is something that the Yemenis and Houthis, would have to take in consideration. And this was something also that was declared, that Israel is not going to stay back and only be in the defense if they would strike or attack Israel.
Indeed. Well, Colonel Webe, I'd like to shift gears to Israel's northern front. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his speech to the Israeli parliament, highlighted that, Hezbollah is now on its knees. Syria is pretty much on its knees as well, so to speak, even though this fluid situation and the attempts by al-Qaeda to take over Damascus are still ongoing. But from your lens, looking at the two theaters, how do you see the latest developments converge with Israel's national security interests?
Yeah, of course, I do agree that there is a really connection and influence between the two terrains. Everything is related here. Gaza, when the war started first in Gaza and then later on in the northern front, it stopped actually the normalization process with the Arab Gulf states and other moderate states to bring a new reality in the Middle East and to continue these Abraham Accords. Everybody is waiting to presume once again this peace track. Now, the crisis in Gaza has to be solved. Will it be solved by maximum pressure and the next stage, or maybe another deal rather than the hostage deal, other deal of evacuation, etc.? This will influence as well the stability in the northern front. Syria right now, the very big thing that happened in Syria is the collapse of the regime, of the Assad regime. And then, in my understanding, the current regime is only a new regime, a new government, one type of a Sunni Islamist religious government that the rest of the Syrians are not accepting, are not giving legitimacy. And I've told before that without the internal legitimacy of any government in Syria, they will not gain the external legitimacy as well. So everything is related, and still there is a hidden confrontation between the two axes. The Shia axe that has lost actually a lot of what he has gained before over the region, and he is still
preparing for continued confrontation in different ways right now in Iraq in order to influence in his way, in hidden ways, Syria and Lebanon again to support his allies. And they have patience, they have time, they are planning to come and to act differently. There is a big open eye for on that from the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia is willing to rehabilitate the state of Syria, to interfere as well the Lebanese politics. You can see that Joseph Aoun, the new president of Lebanon, right now is will arranging a meeting with the MBS of Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi will play a very central role to continue stabilizing the region and to continue the peace process. This opens a lot of questions. What will be the relationship between Israel and Damascus? At the moment, the future picture that we are watching is that Syria will be decentralized for at least 4 different areas. We will continue to see the Russians on the coast with the Alawites. The current administration is opening a big door for the Russian to play a stabilizing role in Syria. We will continue to see the Kurds with their territory to the east of the river, as well as Turkey in the north, and in the south there is the Druze and Dar'a people that are likely much more to be the southern area, somehow a kind of autonomy, or at least they will deal with their local interests together with Jordan and with Israel. The picture in Syria is still far from stabilizing a new government and starting a new starting point in the Syrian politics.
Well, a very interesting point is the fact that Israel has struck once again.
Let me just plug 2 products here before we continue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste that I have. This has no fluoride. It's a very high quality toothpaste, whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, helps with the gum line, reduces inflammation, and by improving your oral hygiene, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. Really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get this structural nano silver toothpaste, use discount 5, and you get $5 off. Get a few tubes of the toothpaste. Very high quality. Another very high quality item that I have on my website is the collagen peptides. The amino acid profile is shown on the screen here. You can take a look at the label on my website. Collagen is a dual purpose product. It'll help with your bones. It'll help with your joints. It will help with your skin and your hair and your nails. It'll help with your tendons and ligaments and cartilage. Really important. Now, collagen peptides, this container has a big scooper. Take 1 scoop a day, mix it with soft foods or with filtered water. Some people mix it with milk. It's up to you, or a shake. But take it every day and do resistance training, and it's going to help with your joints and help with your bone health. Now, if you're taking it for skincare, also take vitamin C and drink it with 64 ounces of filtered water. The vitamin C and the collagen will cross-link and help with your dermal layer. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen, very high quality. Yes, it is a little bit more expensive than the typical collagen that you'll be able to find elsewhere, but this is very high quality, all right? You get what you pay for. But like I said, if you buy my anti-aging boxes or longevity boxes, you get a built-in discount, and you can use discount 5. So there's ways to save money. It's just that you have to, use the discount and purchase the anti-aging and longevity boxes. So, or you can just purchase the items individually. It's up to you. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. get this very high quality collagen.
Various weapons caches in Syria that belonged to the previous regime of the Assad regime. And while the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is trying to portray itself as a democratic, reformed, or some sort of West-loving entity, it's ironic that they return to immediately speak with the Russians, with the Chinese, with anybody but the United States, which is not yet coming and providing its assertion, and more so. The one country that struck Syria more times than Israel in the last couple of months is the United States of America, striking over a dozen times in particularly the Idlib governorate, where Hayat Tahrir al-Sham under Abu Muhammad al-Julani used to rule and still rules with a firm fist, committing massacres against Christians, against Druze, against other minorities, and forcing those children and communities to be indoctrinated by Salafist Islam, something that, of course, other areas in Syria are closely observing and realize. These are not actual Syrians. This is Al-Qaeda for all intents and purposes. And the ones that were targeted by the United States happen to be the allies of the current regime in Damascus. So it's quite ironic to see those various developments. Ambassador Ayalon, what can you clarify to us that we should understand from an American perspective, since I doubt a New Yorker as a president would ever accept Al-Qaeda to rule any country, let alone control Damascus?
Remembering very, very, I would say, we discussed the 9th of 9/11. But it was very well said, Jonathan, that actually the United States is the only regional global power that did not buy into this new face that al-Julani is trying to put on this terror organization, which is now ruling de facto Syria. Because what he's saying, and indeed what Israel is saying as well, is that it's not enough to just have a charm offensive. It's not a matter of statements, it's a matter of deeds and policies on the ground. And at this point, we do not see that he is really reaching out to all the sections of the societies in Syria, namely the Kurds, the Druze, and even the Alawites, for that matter. So from Israel's point of view, it is very important to not leave anything for chance, and this is why we are taking out all the caches and the stockpiles that were left by the regime of Assad, because we cannot afford having them fall into the hands of al-Julani and being used not just against Israel, but also against the own population of Syria. So in that respect, we see a totally new strategy by an approach, national security approach by Israel after the 7th of October, whereby we are not waiting, we are not just looking idly at our foes and enemies getting stronger, but we are nipping the threat in the bud. And about Syria, really, we have to wait and see. I see only two, let's say, extreme possibilities. Either Syria will be glued together under a central regime, or they will be separated by different areas, whether it's the Druze, the Kurds, the Alawites, and the Sunnis.
Absolutely. General Gavish, if you'd like to touch on this very briefly, I'd like actually for you to focus.
I had someone put something in the text message for YouTube. I'm live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, on my website, and on X Spaces. It's collagen peptides. Someone said collagen pesticides. No, peptides. Listen, all right? High quality collagen peptides.
on Iran, since we don't have very much time left, and I'd still like to touch on that. There is the term in Hebrew, shtika roemet, the thunder of quietness, or in English I would term it as the quiet before the storm, since neither the United States nor Israel are talking about Iran at all. And for that matter, yesterday, in a 45-minute speech that in the past would probably be a third about Iran by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he merely said one sentence: "We will not let Iran attain nuclear weapon capability, period," and moved on to the next topic. What are we to read out of that, and to what degree are we in the quiet before the storm?
Well, one word about Syria, and I think it is relevant also for Iran. And I would like to echo what was just mentioned by Ambassador Ayalon. I think that more than anything else, it's important to look on the Israeli interest and Israel, I would say, strategy, which has been changed after 7th of October. And the idea is that we're not looking anymore of the combination between our enemies' capabilities and intentions. Once there are capabilities that are endangering Israel, this is something that has to be limited. And there are all kinds of ways in Syria. Of course, the idea is still not to allow that weapons that could be aimed toward Israel would be in the hands of the Syrian regime, and this is what we've seen yesterday. And of course, the Israeli interest, at least in the south part of Syria, close to the Israeli border, and the relations with the Druze in Syria, which are very important from Israel perspective. Going back to your original question, I don't think that something changed along the years. This was something that was continuously said by Israel. We are not going to allow that a weapon of mass destruction will be in the hands of our enemies. I think that with regard to Iran, there is a strong statement that was said by the Trump administration and by Trump itself. We see already that there are some sanctions that are being put on the table. So Israel always said that all the options are on the table. We prefer that Iran will do it by themselves over the maybe what is being put on them by the United States and maybe the international community. But the options are always on the table. We said it for a long time. I don't think that Israel's strategy overall toward Iran changed from this point of view.
Thank you, General. We have 2 minutes for all of you, so please don't take seconds from the next one. What should we focus on in the next 24 hours from your perspective, 24, 48, 72? What should our viewers look for in this immediate time span? In one sentence, Colonel Webe, we'll start with you.
In one sentence, I would say that the complexity now is hitting Syria. This will be the place of all confrontations of the region. And I think this is coming together with that Israel is returning to its proactive military doctrine again, in order to dominate, first of all, the areas and serving its national interests, and together with that is coming with a new hegemony. Israel can be conducting a very central regional role and to continue ahead the peace process.
That is one long sentence. It's a run-on sentence.
Israel will be accepted as a strong and firm democracy, and contributing also to the stability and the economy of the region.
Thank you, Colonel. Ambassador Ayalon, a shorter sentence, if I may.
all eyes should be on Cairo to see if there are any decisions made operationally from the Arab League. And when it comes to Gaza, we must see if the Hamas is relenting in any way, or we may see more steps taken, like stopping humanitarian aid and even stronger steps.
Thank you, Ambassador. General?
I would focus from a military point of view, reminding us that all the 7 different sectors are still there, and Israel have to be on the watch. And if I'm talking about the Israeli military, we have to remember that in a days from now, Israel would have a new chief of staff, and this would bring with it also some, I believe, some new strategies from the Israeli military.
Absolutely. Wow, that is an understatement. Well, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Colonel Wehebe.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this structural nano silver gel. It's a dual purpose product. You can use it as a skincare. You can use it on your skin after you shave. Guys, if you shave your face, use it on your face. Women, you shave your legs, use it on your legs. It helps to reduce razor burn. It'll help to heal a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn much quicker. And if someone is not feeling well around you, guess what? Put this on your hands, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. Stays active for 5.5 hours. So during the cold season, and this coworker is sick around you, or someone at home is sick around you, guess what? Take the structural nano silver gel. Myotrol, extremely important to take, especially when you get older. Once you hit about age 40, you start to lose muscle mass, and it's harder for you to build muscle. Myotrol helps with gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle and to help with mitochondrial health, so you have the energy to build and maintain that muscle. So take Myotrol, do weight training to build muscle and strength. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get Myotrol. Myotrol has the flavonoids, lignans, and polyphenols that will help for the gene expression that you need to build muscle. But you have to do weight training. You have to do some weightlifting. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need this supplement. Now, if you're an athlete, taking Myotrol is going to help you build strength in your sport. So please take the Myotrol if you're an athlete, young or older. But especially if you're older, you need this because you need the right gene expression to take place so you can build muscle and maintain muscle. Let's go to Bloomberg, balance of power.
Has the right take on things. We'll assemble our political panel next. The signature panel is with us.
All right,
on this big speech
they're
day
going on a break
in Washington. Here. Rick Davis and Gina Shanzano.
They're going on a break. So let me plug a couple more products here. And a reminder for the ones that are listening on Rumble and YouTube and X Spaces. I have X Spaces open for people to give me your opinion about the news or ask questions. So please join X Spaces, or you can just listen in. But this is supposed to be interactive show, so please interact. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. This helps to boost up your energy levels, helps to repair DNA damage for your cellular DNA and your mitochondrial DNA. You have 2 types of DNA, actually. So, and NAD+ helps to protect neurons. So extremely important to take. Once you hit age 40, you need to protect your neurons. So take this with your stack and protect your neurons. It stacks really well with ubiquinol. So NAD+ and ubiquinol, great stack. Ubiquinol is the highest bioavailable form of CoQ10. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. It will help with the health of your mitochondria, so you'll have more energy. And ubiquinol helps to protect your neurons. You stack it with NAD+, and that's supercharging, helping your neural health. Stack this also with Clarity Factor. Taking ubiquinol, NAD plus, and clarity factor, you're really focused on, neural health and mental acuity. Great stat. Resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades, and resveratrol will help because it's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. But not just that, it's going to help with the mitochondrial health, so it's going to help with your ATP levels. And resveratrol will help to get rid of cells that are just sitting there, not dividing and collecting garbage, all right? But resveratrol has the max benefit when you stack it with C60, ubiquinol, NAD+, all right? When you stack it, you get the max benefits out of it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the resveratrol, get the C60 and the NAD+, and the ubiquinol, stack them together, or even the clarity factor, and bam, you're really helping with neural health. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg here. All right, they're still on break here. Let's go to Fox News and talking about ICE raids.
AOC was referring directly to you. What's your response?
Well, she needs to understand that this country gave President Trump a mandate. President Trump's carrying out that mandate. We're going to keep President Trump's promise. He promised to make our community safer, especially against illegal aliens who are public safety threats. And that's why we're prioritizing the worst first. This is exactly what we're doing. I looked at the number this morning. ICE is taking just about 30,000 people off the streets of this country that were in the country illegally in a public safety threat. What I've asked the Department of Justice to do is give clear guidelines of when you cross a line, when you're educating criminal aliens how to invade law enforcement, at what point do you cross that line in impediment? I've asked for clear guidelines so we can give it to the ICE agents so they can perform within the existence of the law. What she needs to understand, why she says she's educating people to the constitutional rights, she's actually telling people how to invade law enforcement, and because of that, the last operation in New York City, a lot of people weren't opening their doors. A lot of people were hiding based on so-called education from various members of Congress. We're talking about child rapists that we weren't able to apprehend because they took an advice from people, how to invade law enforcement. A member of Congress, all these members of Congress that we're talking about, they've said during the Biden administration, the millions of people had a right to claim asylum. They got a right to see a judge. They got a right to due process. But 90% of them will lose their case, get order removed. So there is no due process if the final decision of the court isn't executed, which means the 90% gets order removed, they must be removed. And any member of Congress who wants to prevent ICE from doing the job, enforce law that was enacted by Congress, they pass this law, ICE doesn't make it up, let us do our job. They had the due process, they've been order removed, don't stand in our way. We need to execute the final orders removal, or there's no due process at all in this country. So we're going to stand by the law, we're going to enforce law, we're going to do it without apology.
But it is continuing. Activists continue to warn and instruct illegal migrants on expected ICE activity. They're tipping off the illegals. What can you do about the leaks? Because somebody is telling the activists where you are and who you're raiding.
When we find out who they are, not only will they be unemployed, they're going to be prosecuted. We're taking this seriously. Look, the danger of ICE agents, the danger they face every day, to arrest the worst of the worst, that's what we're concentrating on. It's already a dangerous job. It's a matter of time before one of these leaks causes an ambush, either by a member of TDA, MS-13, one of these groups that just don't care. They would take pride in the fact that they killed an ICE agent or another law enforcement officer. We're going to hold these people accountable. We're pulling out all stops. The Inspector General's involved. Secretary Noem, she's got her staff involved. I got people involved. When we find out who they are, we will prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. They're putting our agents in great danger, and it's only a matter of time before one of our officers will not go home to their families at night because of these leaks. We're taking immediate action.
You are Speaker Mike Johnson's guest tonight for Trump's speech. You're going to be sitting next to the Speaker, I believe, or certainly very close to him. You're going to be a star tonight, Tom Homan.
Look, I'm not the star, Larry. The men and women in that green uniform, they're the star. They got illegal immigration border crossing down to 97% in 3 weeks. The stars are the men and women of ICE and U.S. Marshals and ATF and DEA and FBI, all these task forces out arresting bad guys. They're the champions out there. But look, none of this happens. The border numbers are on 97%. Why? Because President Trump is a strong president. He made executive decisions. He wrote a series of executive orders. He needs to take full credit for the success on the border and interior enforcement operations because he opened that aperture up. He let Border Patrol do what they need to do and enforce the laws. He let ICE do what they do and enforce the law. God bless President Trump. I've said it 100 times. I'll keep saying it. He proves to me every day why he's the greatest president in my lifetime. He proves it every day. And I'm honored to be in the same building, in the same room with President Trump because he's making America safe again.
And you were his first nominee the day he was re-elected. I remember it well. Tom Homan, thanks for being on our program tonight. We'll be looking for you tonight at the speech. Thank you, Tom.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. This is
now,
a very...
The Canadian Prime Minister is reacting after...
This is a very potent antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. By soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the stress in your cells. You're improving your mitochondrial health. You're going to boost up your ATP levels. And by soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the aging of those cells and of those tissues. So you're slowing down the aging process. And that's the reason why it's so important to soak up free radicals. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout. They'll soak up the free radicals that you are producing during your workout, and you will recover quicker. You will notice that your recovery time after your workout is faster when you take C60. So take a teaspoon a day every day, and you are going to improve your ATP levels. You're going to have reduce the stress in the cell. You're going to soak up those free radicals, and by doing that, you're going to be improving your different tissues. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. This is one pillar of the core that I've been talking about. The first pillar, taking max 35 or max 14 to help with your immune system. C60 is the second pillar, to soak up free radicals and reduce stress at the cellular and tissue level. Take turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans for the third pillar, to bring down inflammation and boost up your immune system. And taking Boomer Boost to boost up your metabolism and your energy levels. When you do that, when you do the core protocol, you're really going to improve your health. But you can add stuff to it. And by adding stuff, you're going to further improve. Now, I take a lot of stuff that most people probably couldn't afford. But the thing is it works. All right? And I've tried to teach you how to stack this in a cost-effective manner so you can target different things for your health and wellness. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get C60, take a teaspoon a day. It's very important to soak up those free radicals, and this is way more potent than taking vitamin C, all right? So this is a key to the protocol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and soak up those free radicals. And by soaking up free radicals in your bloodstream, you're also reducing the chances of oxidized LDL. And if you're reducing oxidized LDL, you're reducing the chances of plaque buildup. Now, all right, Bloomberg's back on. So let's switch to Bloomberg here.
My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. The first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and a truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same. Is that enough for Donald Trump tonight to say that Zelensky is on an airplane and he's coming back to sign this deal?
We can never tell it's Donald Trump, but clearly the ball is now in the Trump administration's court. It was in Vladimir Zelensky's court, and we understand that even Lindsey Graham helped put that statement together and gave it the old thumbs up, better days ahead after it went out. But we do have to see how the Trump administration responds to this. The reality is that we had just a few hours after the dust up is probably the best way to say it in the White House on Friday, we had the administration pause aid to Ukraine. I think they would like nothing more than to make that aid pause permanent. So now is he going to join again with Vladimir Zelensky in this mineral deal and release the aid again? I think we really have to wait and see. And of course, this is not just about the United States and Ukraine, it is also about Russia. That remains a huge question mark looming over all of this.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because Bloomberg is reporting that Russia has agreed, Rick Davis, to assist President Trump's administration in communicating with Iran, reaching out to Iran on issues that include the nuclear program and its support for some of the proxies we've seen antagonizing and frequently attacking U.S. interests. Is this good news? Is this the kind of thing that Donald Trump will get Republicans on their feet over tonight?
That would be one of the harder things to get Republicans out of their seat after years of berating Joe Biden's deal with the Iranians on nuclear weapons. To not have any details about what a deal would look like or whether there's even one possible, but to welcome Vladimir Putin as our deal partner.
Now, the Canadian Prime Minister is reacting.
Tough to jump out of your seat and applaud. That being said, anything that gets nuclear weapons out of the hands of the Ayatollah is a good thing. And so if Vladimir Putin can help produce that, then I think we have to be cautious, but hopeful that that something like that could actually benefit our negotiating position. So you can't rule it out just because it's Putin. And as they've said out of Moscow lately, Trump and Putin have a lot of alignment on where they see the world going, and maybe this is one way we can take a step back from nuclear annihilation at the hands of the Ayatollah.
Well, maybe they'll have some signs made up for this in the House chamber tonight. Jeannie, I don't know what Democrats are going to do with any of this, but what I'm reading is pretty wild. It's not just that they're going to be bringing special guests made up of federal workers who've been laid off or others impacted by the work of the DOJ. Politico says, get ready for the noisemakers. They're going to have props, noisemakers, signs with anti-Trump, anti-DOJ messages, eggs. I don't know if we're throwing eggs, but empty egg cartons to get to the price of eggs here. I love pocket constitutions. I'll tell you, nothing will shut them.
Yeah, what happened to Bloomberg there?
But I could see some eggs being raised. I, of course, am in favor of pocket constitution. Never should travel without one, so that's okay. As long as they hold it up nicely. But this is where we are, and we know the Democratic leadership has been pushing hard against this. They have been urging their members not to become the story, not to take the sort of attention off of Donald Trump and everything that's gone on in the last 43 days. But it's hard for Democrats to do that because on the ground,
deeply concerned about what they're seeing in the last 6 to 7 weeks. That includes DOJ, that includes Ukraine, and you can just go down the list. So to imagine that all of these members gather together and nobody takes a stand to draw attention to that, I can't believe it. So, I am just worried about what we're not thinking somebody might do, and that may be what we see.
Boy, I guess Joe Wilson is the OG at this point. Rick, when it comes to disrupting the State of the Union, I guess he was ahead of his time. But I do want to mention a headline that Donald Trump just put up on Truth Social, Rick, and it has to do with the tariffs, because surely he's going to talk about that tonight. He says, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the U.S., of course they were announced earlier, our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. I'm bringing this up because you're looking at the reaction today on Wall Street, Rick, and we talked about it last evening on the program. We took a deep dive on the S&P 500. We've now round-tripped in the markets to where we were pre-election here. That's certainly not a look that Donald Trump likes. What does he say about that later?
Yeah, look, I'm sure that he's watching the markets, especially yesterday's cratering of the S&P, and is thinking, this is a bad report card, especially leading up to the big speech tonight. And yet he is not convinced that this has anything to do with his trade policies. When you hear him talk, he thinks trade policies are going to make America rich again, and that should have a beneficial impact on the markets. He hasn't been watching the flight to safety, and maybe those things don't care, that he doesn't care so much about them. But as far as he's concerned, the way to make America rich again is to put up these tariffs, charge foreign countries, we're not charging Americans, and get them to pay our bills and rebalance the trade deficit. And I don't think anything that anybody says, including the performance of the markets, is going to dissuade him of this. He's been talking about this for a long time, 20 years. And I think he's now seeing that he can actually, as president, flex this muscle without any Congress or lawsuits. I mean, everything else he's doing, he's either got to hit Congress or he's got to convince the judiciary to let him do it. And this is one where he gets full field running, and he's going to do that. And he's not intimidated by countries like China and Mexico, and he sure as heck isn't going to think that he's got to worry about Governor Trudeau in Canada, even though Trudeau's right. It's going to cost a lot of money for everybody in both Canada and the United States, and nothing really positive is going to come out of it. But look, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that tonight he's going to take a victory lap on the tariffs and say that this is what's making America financially stronger.
I think he's got a terminal. He posted on Truth Social. It's a screen grab of a New York Times story in black and gold. Interesting, Jeannie. There's a senator, a Democrat from Michigan, who's going to deliver the official response tonight. In our remaining moment, I'm giving you even less than that. I'm sorry. How does Senator Slotkin frame this when it comes to the impact on Michigan?
I think she frames it as what she ran on, which is the costs of goods, grocery stores, eggs, as we talked about, but avocados, oranges, tomatoes, everything, prices go up. Maybe she quotes Trudeau, Donald, you're a smart guy, but this is a dumb thing to do. And there's hardly a person outside that administration who disagrees with that.
Is it a win to quote Justin Trudeau tonight? I don't know. Jeannie and Rick will stay with us. Our second out.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Zeolite. Zeolite helps to detoxify your body from heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Zeolite is a negatively charged molecule that will attach to positively charged molecules, and then it allows you to urinate out those toxins and those chemicals in about 6 to 8 hours. You can take Zeolite every day. You take 2 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water, do that every day. If you want a more intense detox, then do that maybe once or twice a year, that intense detox. Take about 5 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that every day until the bottle is done, and then do that once or twice a year. But it is better to do it every day. Also, make sure you drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods because that has a lot of chemicals in it. And look in your house, clean the garage and the basement, and even in the closets and the cupboards. Be mindful of what type of chemicals are in your household. The cleaning agents, paints, pesticides, all these kinds of things you want to kind of like reduce your exposure to, because they do affect your system. You breathe that stuff in, you touch it, you absorb it through your skin or whatever, and eventually you have toxins around you. So, or in you. So you want to get those out, all right? So you want to mitigate your exposure. You want to improve your water quality by filtering your water, and you want to eat better foods, stop eating the processed foods that has a lot of chemicals in it, and then detox. And a great way to detox is to take the zeolite. Now let's talk about another product that can help with detox. Heirloom barley or gladiator barley will help with detoxification. All right. It'll also bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, and the gladiator barley will do all of that and help build strength. So if you really want to detoxify your body, take the zeolite every day, and also be taking the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley, and you're going to be detoxing. Now, what's in the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley? It's a high density protein, all right? But it also, like I said, it brings down inflammation, and it's going to soak up free radicals because of superoxide dismutase is an antioxidant. So it's a great way to detox. It's a high density protein. Take about a half a scoop or a full scoop each day. Mix it with soft foods or filtered water. Some people mix it with milk or a smoothie. It's up to you. But take it every day to help to detoxify your body. It's a great way to get healthy. And again, the gladiator barley gets all the benefits of the heirloom barley, but you also get strength benefits from it. Especially when you do weight training, it stacks really well with myotrol, because myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. The gladiator barley is the high density protein, which is the actual building blocks to build muscle and maintain that muscle. So it's a great stack. So if you're an athlete, take the gladiator barley, but you get even more benefit if you add it with the myotrol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off.
From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
Tariff Tuesday brings quick retaliation. Welcome to the fastest show in politics as Canada responds to 25% tariffs with its own levies just hours before President Trump delivers his address to Congress. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Katie Lyons in Washington. Welcome to the Tuesday edition, the early edition of Balance of Power. Kaylee, it's interesting. The markets don't seem to like this, but based on the most recent truth from Donald Trump, this could just keep on going.
Yeah, it certainly could. He seems to not like what he heard from Prime Minister Trudeau earlier today, who I would remind everyone said these tariffs were, quote, very dumb. And the president now saying on Truth Social that Governor Trudeau, once again referring to maybe the 51st state he would like to see, should be explained to. He says, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts a retaliatory tariff on the U.S., our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount, knowing reciprocal tariffs are slated for April 2nd. Right. And it begs the question, would that be an additional 25% on top of the 25% that is implemented as of today? How does this math?
Great questions, and we would love answers. Maybe we'll hear them in the big speech tonight. Yeah. It's slated to start just after 9 p.m. We'll have special coverage here. It's going to be a long day in Washington with a lot of news, and not just on tariffs. We're looking at Ukraine and so many other topics today. The market's not in a great mood while we're having this conversation.
Yeah, so we'll see how the president addresses the moves in the markets and how Americans are feeling about the economy when he addresses a joint session of Congress this evening. And we'll be speaking with one lawmaker who, of course, will be in the room for that. Republican Congressman Mike Alford of Missouri will join us in just a minute. But first, we begin with a check on the markets. Charlie Pellet has a look from New York. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Kaylee Lyons. We are off session lows, but still a down day, a lot of red across the board here with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all slumping. Stocks getting hammered as concerns about the impact of a trade war on the global economy spur a flight to short-term bonds, gold, and haven currencies. Here's where we stand. S&P right now down 75 at 57.74. That is a drop of 1.3%. We have got the Dow down 658, down 1.5%. The Nasdaq Composite Index down 138, down by about 0.7%. The 10-year at 4.16%, with the 2-year now at 3.89%. Gold up $18 the ounce, up 0.7%, 20.11, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.5%, 68.06 on WTI. Bitcoin now unchanged on the day at 85,300. Among the names reporting earnings, Target and Best Buy, they are both warning consumers to expect higher prices as a direct result of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China. Shares of both companies, they are trading lower. Target down 4.2%. Best Buy especially hard hit today, down now by 13.1%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. And back we go to Washington. Balance of Power continues now. Once again, your hosts, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons.
All right, Charlie Pellet with a look at the market reaction to Tariff Tuesday. Thank you so much, because indeed that is what today turned out to be. Obviously, Joe, there was much question as to whether or not the President of the United States would carry through on his threat to impose higher tariffs on China, now 20%, and of course 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. But to be fair, when speaking at the White House yesterday, he did say the deadline of midnight is not going to see a deal done before it. This is happening, and indeed it did.
25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs.
No room left, he said, for Canada and Mexico. And so, as Kaylee mentioned, they took effect at midnight. Justin Trudeau, of course, Canada's prime minister, found room for retaliation, announcing his government would implement retaliatory tariffs, nearly $100 billion of imported U.S. goods. He didn't seem too happy when he addressed reporters earlier today. Listen.
There is absolutely no justification or need whatsoever for these tariffs today. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false.
Donald Trump saying, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the U.S., our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. So this is suddenly getting bigger before our eyes here, and it's where we start our conversation with Sean Donnan, Bloomberg senior writer for economics, has been far ahead in his journalism, looking at the impact of tariffs. And
Trudeau doesn't understand the game chicken. If America has less to lose with playing chicken, most likely Canada is going to fold. There's much more devastation in their economy than ours with these tariff wars. And not only that, the people are going to kick him out. I mean, Trudeau's career is over.
Are coming into play about growth in the U.S. economy. I mean, we are going to see, we heard it from Target, we heard it from Best Buy, but we've been hearing it from other companies all along that they think they will see slower growth, slower demand as a result of these tariffs, and that is going to hit the overall U.S. economy. And
so what? Let it. So what? Let it. In the long run, America will be better off.
America among countries that are supposed to be allies that have benefited from each other for decades now.
Well, what the administration would say, at least we've heard this from the president, has been defended by others close to him, is that other countries will be paying these levies, that it's not ultimately to American consumers. And to the extent that these higher prices are actually passed on to consumers, it's a one-time price adjustment. This is not going to be something persistently inflationary. Is that true, though, Sean, if we're now talking about leveling up even existing tariffs at a later date?
No, so I mean it's very clear when when imported goods land at U.S. ports, the people paying the tariffs, literally writing the checks, are importers. Those are U.S. companies, and they tend, and this is what economic studies have shown over and over again, they tend to pass those costs or a significant portion of those costs on to consumers. So, tariffs are a tax on imports, and that is a tax that is paid by U.S. companies and consumers, and we're going to see that hit the economy again. I mean, Howard Lutnick last week was talking about raising up to $700 billion in taxes, in tariff revenue, just from these reciprocal tariffs that haven't been introduced yet. These tariffs, the 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and the 20% tariffs on Chinese goods, are going to raise hundreds of billions of dollars more. Those are all going to be costs that are borne by U.S. businesses and consumers, and that's going to hit the economy. The other thing that hits the economy is just the higher cost of doing business from tariffs. If I'm a manufacturer in America today, I rely on a lot of imported components, and so on. Those components today cost more than they did yesterday.
Just last thing before we talk to Congressman Mark Alford about this, we're talking about Canada because we've heard about their retaliation. Sunday is when we'll hear from Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum says her retaliation will be spelled out. She said she had a plan B, a C, and a D. What are we in for from Mexico?
Look, I mean, one of the things that is really in play and is going to be hit hard here is the auto sector, right? We import cars from Mexico. We import auto parts from Mexico. We also export auto parts to Mexico that go into a lot of those cars that come back in. If those are then hit by tariffs on the Mexican side, it's just going to raise the cost even more than these U.S. tariffs are. And, we'll see how it escalates. If we move from plan A to B to C to D as things escalate, the damage is just only going to grow.
All right, Sean Donnan, Bloomberg senior writer for economics, here with us as we digest all of this tariff news. Thank you so much. Joining us here on Balanced Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. And joining us now on the program live from Capitol Hill is Republican Congressman Mark Alford of Missouri, who sits on the Small Business Committee. Congressman, welcome back to Bloomberg. It's good to have you, sir. When you consider what small businesses may be thinking today in the face of news of these tariffs, wondering what will happen to the costs they are facing and their ability to pass those costs on to the people who purchase goods and services from them, what would you tell them?
Interesting, you should bring up small business. We just had a meeting with a new administrator, Senator Kelly Loeffler, who is intent on getting small business representatives into the rural parts of America. In particular, we requested that in our district just south of Kansas City. I'll tell you what our small business owners are saying. Look, we know that there are going to be some price increases that they're going to have to pass on to consumers, but it is worth it if we can save 100,000 lives a year through the fentanyl poisoning. This past administration, the Biden administration, with the porous borders, we're allowing this fentanyl poison to come up and this toxins to poison and kill our young people. And so, look, we get stuff delivered to our house just about every day, it seems like, from Amazon. And typically cheap goods, immediate gratification from China. I'm willing to pay a little bit more if we can stop the poisoning, particularly of our young people, that's coming through Canada and Mexico.
Well, that's really interesting, Congressman. We appreciate that firsthand account. If small business owners are telling you that, then they are prepared for some short-term pain, as Donald Trump had previously warned.
Look, I think small businesses got kind of the short-sheeted with this past administration. They have not gotten the capital and counseling that they need from the Small Business Administration. It seems like Administrator Guzman was more concerned about registering Democrat voters than actually getting out with representatives and helping small businesses grow. Kelly Loeffler is changing that, and we are going to make sure that small businesses thrive. Part of that is going to be building small businesses in the rural area. We're intent on doing that. I know that these tariffs might be a temporary setback, but it is a short-term pain for a long-term gain for America. Yep. Reciprocal tariffs are what I think that we need to right the ship in America, to gain the respect on the world stage, and Donald Trump is going to do that with my support in the Republican conference.
And if you're smart and you're paying attention to what I've been saying, as the market is going down, start buying in. So when we get past this tariff war, that there'll be an ascent. So what's happening is that you got this tariff war throughout this year, and the market will go down. It might come up a little bit and then go back down, and come up a little bit and go back down. But buy in. So once the tax cuts bill is passed at the end of the year, the market's going to rally hard. And so you're going to benefit. So take this as an opportunity to make money. Don't be stupid.
If we can get this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed through the House Reconciliation and the Senate Reconciliation Bill, that would go a long way to restoring confidence in the bond market, and in turn, I believe the Federal Reserve will bring down the interest rates.
And when you make that money, make sure you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and donate. And oh, by the way, purchase the products that will actually help with your health so you can keep on trading and making money.
Business that can't keep up with these regulations is adding 25% to the cost of a home in Kansas City. I firmly believe that the economic policies that Donald J. Trump is instilling now is going to turn our economy around in a short order within the next 2 quarters and get our economy juiced again,
Exactly.
where we're not going to have to worry about these reciprocal tariffs.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
So the cost of
and the
goods
thing
are-
is don't you think that these senators and these representatives know a thing or two about what's going to be happening with the bills being passed and where to put the money in? Which companies would probably benefit the most? And they want the market to go down so they can buy in. You think they want to buy in when the market's at the top? Of course not. Create like an artificial kind of sell-off. You got to start thinking like 3D, 4D chess here.
Not the hyperinflation that Joe Biden brought about, but I think a reasonable rate of inflation that we can all live with a higher salary, higher earning power, and higher confidence in the American economy.
I do wonder about a potential wage price spiral that could stem from that, Congressman, if people are constantly having to demand more from their employers so that they can afford the cost of goods, and that buying power only continues to drive the cost of goods higher. But when we're considering people who have jobs or maybe negotiating their wages, of course, there are now thousands of federal workers who no longer do, given the efforts of the Department of Government Efficiency. I know you had a town hall last week and you had to answer some questions about those layoffs and the spending cuts. Is this making your job and your communication with your constituents harder, if not the concept of reducing the federal government, but the way in which this has been done?
I love talking to our constituents, Democrats, Republicans, independent, politically agnostic. I represent 772,047 individuals. We get the same level of concierge service in our 3 offices in our district. But look, you've got to have a conversation. I want to have a give and take with the constituents. We had a lot of people show up at this. It was really supposed to be a coffee. Usually I have 10 people show up. There was almost 200. I had everyone write down their question on index cards. I read the question. Then when I started answering, they would try to shout me down. That is not an exchange of ideas. That is not answering questions. I want to listen to people, but I also want to have a discussion. And that's not happening now because of organized disruptors who are trying to make what we do ineffective. And that is not right for our constituents who really want to have discussions.
Just talk about organized disruptors. On the other side of your aisle tonight, congressmen, Democrats may be bringing props, signs, even noisemakers, according to some reports. What will be the decor?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This is the 4th pillar of the core that I've been talking about throughout this transmission. The Boomer Boost helps to boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. You're going to lose weight. It has 68 nutrients. There's a label there telling you everything that's in there. Of course, go on my website, read the label carefully, but this works wonders. All right. Now, I've been taking this, and what I have noticed within 72 hours, my energy levels were even more my metabolism is sped up, and the mental acuity is higher. Sleep is better. There's a better overall burn of energy throughout the day instead of it spiking. You know, sometimes you'd have an energy spike and then it'll come back down, and then another energy spike, you know, when you eat or whatever. So, but this is a steady burn all throughout the day for your energy, and you'll sleep better. You'll notice that your dreams, you're just in a deeper sleep. This is a great product. All right. So you're going to boost up your energy levels. Your metabolism is going to go up, and it focuses on a few systems. It focuses on brain health. It'll focus on cardiovascular health, so your blood vessel health, and also your heart health. All right. But it'll also help with strength and muscle health. And of course, it boosts up your energy levels and your metabolism. You'll lose weight by doing this. Now, you take a full scooper, mix it with soft foods. That's how I do it. I mix it with hummus. But you can mix it with yogurt or with a smoothie or just filtered water. Some people mix it with milk. Take it every day. That is your lunch or your breakfast. All right? So if you're going to do it for your breakfast, take this, and that's your breakfast every day. All right? How I do it is I take it for lunch. Now, you'll notice that you're going to be losing weight. All right? And it is a great way to help with that cardiovascular health, the brain health, muscles. This could be used for athletes also as a pre or post workout fuel source. All right. It stacks really well with Myotrol, and it stacks really well if you're an athlete with Gladiator Barley. All right. Now, for people that are not athletic, you're going to benefit from this too. Like I said, full scooper once a day for your breakfast or for your lunch. You will lose weight and you're going to have energy. All right. And you'll notice the difference in 72 hours or less. And your mental acuity is going to be better. Your sleep will be better. And you'll just have this extra vitality. It's hard to describe it. It's the best way to describe it is it's like you'll notice that you feel younger. All right. And you'll want to do, you'll have more energy to do things. And because you have more energy to do things, you're just going to be more active. And when you're more active, you just have more vitality. When someone is just sitting around and just wasting away and atrophying, they're literally dying quicker. But if you have more vitality, you're not dying quicker. You're just more active, right? And so when you're more active, you're moving around, you're using your muscles and using your brain, and you're just have more vitality. Now, it works really well with taking it together with heirloom barley or Gladiator barley. And that way you can control your A1C levels. For ones that don't understand what that means, it basically means that you're controlling your blood glucose levels. So I just gave you a recipe on how to improve your blood glucose levels, how to lose weight, how to get healthy, how to target your cardiovascular health, your muscles, and your brain, and boosting up your metabolism. It's a great way to get healthy. Now, the heirloom barley, again, focuses on detoxification, lowering the inflammation, and soaking up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. The other barley is the Gladiator barley that does everything that's in here, but it also helps you to build muscle, more muscle, right, and gain strength. So take the Boomer Boost. It's a great product. It stacks really well with heirloom barley, which is a high density protein. You take a half or full scoop of this, or the Gladiator barley, same way, half or a full scoop of Gladiator barley every day, and you're going to see the benefits. And again, it stacks really well with Boomer Boost, Myotrol, and Gladiator barley to build muscle. So that's my transmission for today. Tonight, I'm going to do a live stream of Trump's speech. So please tune in. We're going to be live streaming on Rumble. We'll be live streaming on YouTube. during that time period, the Asian session will be open, so you'll see the dashboard of how the Asian session is trading. You probably will see some market movements going on, maybe in the currency market. And I'll be live streaming on X Spaces, so you can listen in that way too, and on my website. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and support the effort that I'm doing with this broadcast by purchasing the products and stacking them the way I'm telling you to stack them. By stacking, you will get the benefits, and it's a holistic approach. It's not just about the supplementation. It's about proper diet, exercise, filter your water, got to do stretching exercises, balancing exercises, activate that cerebellum, and mindfulness, learning new things, so you have that positive neuroplasticity. And when you do all this in a holistic fashion with the proper supplementation and the stacking, you're gonna notice that your body is healing, and these different organ systems will perform better. So you're going to be slowing down the aging process and improve your immune system. But it takes diligence. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the products and help my work and help your health. It's a win-win situation. Thank you for listening. I greatly appreciate all the ones that tune in regularly to listen and to participate. And see you tonight.